Welcome to Just a Minute. Oh, thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure not only to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show 4 highly talented players of the game, who've all excelled themselves in various forms of comedy and humour with great distinction. So it's a pleasure to welcome, in no particular order, Paul Merton, Julian, Clary, Jenny Eclair, and Clement Freud, and would you please welcome all 4 of them? As usual, I'm going to ask them to speak at different times on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject on the card in front of me. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score, and she will blow a whistle when 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the beautiful, elegant Theatre Royal in that wonderful coastal city of Brighton in the lovely county of Sussex. And as you've just heard, we have in front of us a great cosmopolitan Brighton audience, all ready and eager to get the show going. So let's start with Paul Merton and the subject, Paul, very apt for this show in Brighton, Brighton Rock. Tell us something about Brighton Rock in just a minute, if you can, starting now.
It was a book, then a film, and now a piece of souvenir confectionery. The movie was made circa 1948, I think. Richard Attenborough played the part of Pinky, and there were various other actors in there. It's a Graham Greene story originally, and he may have indeed have written the screenplay. It was a wonderful, evocative piece of cinema made just after the war, when Brighton was perhaps not... Bogner.
Julian, you were the first to challenge. Hesitation, and there. So, Julian, you get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject, which is Brighton Rock, and there are 36 seconds available, starting now.
There's a lot to be said for having something long, pink and hard in your mouth. The longer the better, I always say, and particularly delicious when that sugary coating slips down the back of your throat. I never leave Brighton without a bag full of Brighton Rock. It's what I come here for. It's delicious. I can't get enough of it. It's particularly...
Paul Merton challenge you. I think just in time. Julian, I think you struck a chord with this audience somewhere there. Paul, what was your challenge?
There's a slight hesitation there.
Well, there was so much laughter from the audience, I didn't hear any hesitation, actually.
No, you couldn't hear it?
I couldn't hear a hesitation. No, you couldn't hear a hesitation, no, but I didn't observe it, and I wasn't aware of it, because he seemed to be going in full throttle, and the audience were going with him. Julian, I disagree with the challenge. So you have another point, and you still have Brighton Rock, and you have 7 seconds starting now.
It's particularly nice if it's pink, and I'm...
Clement Freud challenge.
It's been pink.
It's been pink before, yes. So that's a great challenge to Clement, a point to him, and 4 seconds to tell us something about Brighton Rock, starting now.
I like the film enormously because Hermione Baddeley was one of my favourites.
In this show, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud. So at the end of that round, he has 3 points. Julian's got 2, and the other 2 have yet to score. Julian, will you take the next round? It's how to bring a boring conversation to a conclusion. You can repeat in this show the subject on the card or any individual words at any particular time. Julian, 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
My favourite method of bringing a boring conversation to a close would be to say I tire of you. Failing that, I try physical means such as glazing over, perhaps falling asleep, or getting out a gun.
Jenny Eclair's
He
challenge.
might have been trying to breathe, but I think it was a hesitation.
I think it was too, Jenny, yes.
Oh, you heard that one, did you?
Yes. I observed it. I was aware of it.
Are you aware?
Yes, I was aware of it. Thank you, Paul, for this. Jenny, a correct challenge. So you have how to bring a boring conversation to a conclusion, and 46 seconds available, starting now.
The simplest way of bringing a dull conversation to a close is simply to say, I've got the most appalling diarrhea. Do excuse me. The other option one can try, this works for me, is to say, would you like to sleep with me? At this point, they look at their watch and simply remember... I don't know why I said simply, because I've said simply twice now.
I know you have.
I know what I have done.
You know what you've done, but sometimes sometimes they can be generous and let you go.
Did they?
They didn't know Paul Merton challenged.
Oh.
Well, you said simply 4 times.
Yes. So, Paul, you have a correct challenge. You have a point. You have how to bring a boring conversation to a conclusion, and 28 seconds starting now.
I usually find the words "goodness, Nicholas" is at the time brings the conversation to an end. It's amazing how well this works. In any kind of situation, you find yourself in circumstances where you're chatting away to somebody and you think, oh my God, I wish I was dead. And suddenly you see an opportunity to close that pit of intercourse between the two of you. And what a blessed relief it is.
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
We're talking about conversation, not intercourse.
You can have verbal intercourse.
You can.
And also...
That might be the best offer you get all night, Clement.
And also grammatically you can as well. We give you a bonus point for what you said, but Paul was not, strictly speaking, deviating from the subjects on the card, so he keeps the subject with another point, and 3 seconds to go on how to bring a boring conversation to a conclusion, starting now.
The very best thing to do, and mark my words...
Right. Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point and has moved forward. He's now equal in the lead with Clement Freud. Right, Jenny, will you take the next subject?
I will.
The subject is clutter. Tell us something about clutter. Is it something that's predominant in your life?
Well,
anyway, we'll hear about it in just a minute, starting now.
Do you know, being a slovenly old slut, I have heaps of clutter in my life. Beneath the bed, behind the curtains. I live with a minimalist for whom clutter is an absolute anathema. He's always following me around with his little dustbin and brush. In fact, some days when I'm looking particularly untidy, he attempts to sweep me into the cupboard under the stairs, which is brimming with broken hoovers, plastic buckets, empty tins of paint, and a cleaning lady that I once killed.
Paul, you challenge.
Well, I mean, I've heard of clutter, but having a cleaning lady you once killed in a cupboard, that's very untidy, isn't it? There was a bit of hesitation in there.
I will give you hesitation, but no. I mean, in her world of fantasy, she could have a cleaning lady. I don't know. Anyway. Paul, it's a correct challenge for hesitation. 33 seconds for you on clutter, starting now.
My mum used to work for Jenny Eclair as a cleaning lady, but sadly we haven't seen her for some 15 years now. We never know what happened to her. There was some talk perhaps she'd gone to the Amazon to find herself, or maybe to the Indian subcontinent.
Julian Clary, challenge.
He's deviating. He's talking about his mother in the Amazon, not about clutter.
Yes, I think that's a very good challenge. So, Julian, a correct challenge, 20 seconds available. Clutter, starting now.
Some people live in filth, but I'm not one of them. I enjoy nothing more than a squirt and a wipe in the kitchen. So all my clutter is kept in cupboards, on shelves, neatly labelled and stacked in piles. There's green clutter in one cupboard, and there's blue clutter under the stairs, and...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of cupboard.
There were 2 cupboards.
Yes, there were 2 cupboards, yes. Listen, you can enjoy the show, but you mustn't be... Clement, I see why you said because you've estimated he's got in with only 3 seconds to go. Oh, you've got some friends there, some are cheering, Clement. So 3 seconds on clutter with you, Clement, starting now.
I have 2 cupboards, none of which have any clutter.
Clement Freud speaking as the whistle when gained that extra point with others in the round. He's now gone in the lead again. Head of Paul Merton, Julian Clary, Jenny Eclair in that order. And Clement, your turn to begin. And the subject now is TV chefs. So tell us something about television chefs or TV chefs, starting now.
In olden days, there was Thena Skinner and Philip Harbin. They were
Jenny Eclair challenge.
That was a gaping chasm.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. No. I know you whipped this audience up into a frenzy to be on your side, Jenny, but no, I disagree.
I killed Paul Merton's mother. I'm quite prepared to kill you. No, give him the ball back. No, I don't mind.
I must be fair when the rules adjustment. I don't think he paused to that extent. Teetering, close, but not there. 55 seconds with you, Clement, TV
chefs. I couldn't have paused much in 5 seconds, could I?
Not much.
Not having said all I did.
But you were speaking a bit more slowly than usual. I think that was her point. But anyway, it wasn't. 55 seconds. TV chefs starting now.
Those original TV chefs actually taught viewers how to cook. They said, here is an oven, there a stove, under a grill, over a salamander, and eggs, meat, fish, nice things that people actually wanted to master were portrayed on the television screens. And today...
Jenny challenged again.
Did he say television twice? Did he?
Yes.
No.
TV chefs.
TV chefs.
You're
It's
so
on the
cunning,
card.
Clement.
Yes, he's cunning, but you are funny, so there we are. 32 seconds, Clement. TV chef starting now.
Today's TV chefs actually try and tell you how terrific they are. Almost any program on any channel, I've said any twice.
Yes. Paul was the first to challenge.
Said any 3 times.
Yeah, no. TV chefs, the subject's with you, Paul. 24 seconds, starting now.
I don't really take much notice of these TV chefs. Anthony Worrell Thompson is one, and Ainsley Harriott I know from the days when he used to be on the cabaret circuit in London. But it's not the sort of shows that really appeal to me. I'm not that interested in watching other people cook. It's a bit like watching
Jenny.
He said like twice.
Yes, and watching, and you've got in this time.
right.
Yes.
I'm overexcited.
TV chefs is with you now. 9 seconds, starting now, Jenny.
My favourite was Fanny Craddock, a ghastly gargoyle of the kitchen who used to bully her poor husband Johnny into a little puddle.
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
The subject is TV chefs.
Oh, you're being very subtle now. And I think Fanny would like to put herself into that category.
She had more balls on her, that
Yes,
woman.
yes.
I don't know anything about her private life. What do you mean she had more?
How would you have described it, Clement?
She was one chef, and the subject is chefs.
I think, Jenny, you were not deviating, and Fanny Craddock certainly was a chef and a cook and so forth, and you have 1 second to continue, starting now.
The Galloping Gourmet.
So Jenny Eclair, with other points in the round and also one for speaking as the whistle went, has leapt forward, and she's now in second place, just ahead of Julian, Clary, and just ahead of them is Paul Merton and Clement Freud in that order, moving upwards. And Paul, your turn to begin on the subject, things that make me sneeze. Unusual subject. Tell us something about them in this game, starting now.
Teflon saucepans, balconies. These are the kind of things that make me sneeze. Hay fever is a terrible affliction which I suffer from very mildly.
Julian, you challenged.
I didn't mean to challenge.
Did you not?
I thought you were about to...
Yes, but I didn't, did I?
You
You're a bit
didn't.
premature.
Are you going to take a point away from me?
No, I can't. I never take points away. You either gain points.
Oh, don't you?
Yes, you gain points, and if
Oh,
you
so
want
I
to have
can-
him for hesitation, you gain a point.
But then you give him an extra point.
No, I don't give him an extra point. Julian, you played this game before.
Now you tell me.
Yes. And you've got a correct challenge.
Hang on. What was... What was his challenge?
Hesitation.
Well, he hasn't said that yet.
You did say, didn't you?
I passed it to you on a little note.
You've given me an impossible situation, Julian. He hesitated, and you haven't said it.
No,
So
I agree. He hesitated.
I'm sure your friend Paul will give you a belated challenge there. 51 seconds. Let's hear from you on things that make me sneeze, starting now. Paul challenged.
Hesitation, I'm
Yes,
afraid.
right, Paul. You've actually got the subject back. You didn't start. It was gone for a whole second. Nothing happened.
Oh, I was inhaling.
I think this makes it all fair and all square. They've both got a point. So, Paul, you have the subject back again. 50 seconds. Things that make me sneeze, starting now.
London transport buses, gravel, wallpaper, hotel foyers, loose women.
Jenny challenged.
I think in his head he was seeing a comma, but it was a hesitation.
No, it wasn't a hesitation.
Wasn't it?
No. He was going on an incredible list, which was getting more and more devious as it went on, but nobody challenged.
Yes, he was deviating. That's what he was doing.
It was a devious thought, but he wasn't deviating within the rules of just a minute. Paul, you have 44 seconds. Things that make me sneeze starting
God, really?
now.
Oh, and trains, and it's all kinds of things. Maybe perhaps the people we must feel sorry for today are the sneezers of Great Britain, those poor souls who can't help but find themselves afflicted by this terrible condition of the inner nostril. It's a crime that the government doesn't spend more money. I can't believe people are listening to this rubbish. There's somebody in the front row taking notes.
Well, they're doing it after dinner speech, obviously. Julian, you challenged.
A general breakdown that would come under the heading, I think, of deviation from the subject.
All right. He obviously wants to release the subject to you. You have 21 seconds on things that make me sneeze, Julian, starting now.
I actively seek out things that are going to make me sneeze because I enjoy the sensation. It's the nearest thing to an orgasm that some of us know.
Paul challenged.
Hesitation.
No. You have 13 seconds on things that make me sneeze, starting now.
Next to my bed, I've got a pepper mill, just in case I wake up in the night and feel like a jolly good sneeze. I have been known to have a multiple sneeze, which was particularly thrilling. The last time I had one of those was in Greece. I think it was the donkeys that were in the room next door.
Well, Julian Clary was speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. Others in the round. He's now moved forward from the last place into second place with Paul Merton, one behind our leader Clement Freud and just ahead of Jenny Eclair. And Julian, it's also your turn to begin. And the subject is appearing in Panto. I think I should explain to our listeners the reason we got that immediate reaction from this audience here in Brighton is because Julian was in Panto last Christmas here in Brighton. Appearing in Panto is a subject, Julian, starting now.
Yes, indeed, it's true. This very erection on which I'm sitting was...
Jenny, you challenge.
He developed an unfortunate speech
After
impediment.
what he said, I'm not surprised. And Jenny, you've got in with 57 seconds. Appearing in Panto, starting now.
Extraordinarily enough, I have never been invited to appear in Panto, possibly because I don't have the legs for the pantomime leading man-boy thing. I've got confused
Paul
now.
challenged.
There's always the horse.
Oh, Paul!
It's all right, I'll come back.
Jenny, sometimes I give bonus points for funny remarks. But this
Take
case,
one off him for being nasty.
No, on this occasion, I won't take one off him. I'll give you the bonus point, which goes to, which could have
And
gone
can I
to
still
Paul
have
for a
the
second.
round?
And you've still got the round.
Thank you.
Yes. Because actually, you see, you weren't deviating these. You get a point for being interrupted.
Yes.
You get a bonus point for the insult. And you have appearing in Panto starting now.
I don't have the...
And he's challenged, yes.
Hesitation.
Yes, go on, have it. I'm sick of this stupid round now.
All right. Clement, 47 seconds, appearing in Panto, starting now.
There are two things you can do in life, and one is to appear in Panto. The other is not to appear in Panto. And I have chosen the latter of these options. I would like...
Paul challenged.
Well, it's a repetition of appear.
Yes?
It's on the card.
It says appearing.
Appearing
in Panto,
is on the card.
And you said appear twice.
No,
appearing in
and
Panto.
appear.
You said appear in Panto or not appear
Appear
in
in
Panto.
Panto.
They don't like
No, don't say ooh. It's a correct challenge.
On the basis of TV chefs and TV chef. That's a sort of...
Yes, I agree with Paul. That was pedantic. This wasn't. This is correct challenge, Paul. You have 37 seconds, appearing in Panto, starting now.
I appeared in pantomime with Julian Clary on the ITV version of that popular Christmas pastime, and the audience was sickened by some of the things they saw on stage that night. Luckily, myself and my fellow panellists over there were absolved from the main blame, but the spectacle was absolutely appalling in the second half when somebody, a well-known TV face and indeed name, lost the plot completely and was very rude to one of the other performers on that particular erection. Now, I can't go into what they...
As Julian Cherry challenged.
Well, he's nicked my word erection. I'd said that earlier.
Well, I was trying to not say stage again.
Yes. And it's also, I don't think the word is actually your particular personal word.
Well, he's done a lot. He's done a lot to make it popular. I'm willing to...
But I don't think he can claim it for himself. I think you should share it around.
Well, if there's one going, I'll have it.
I don't know where we're going with this one, but I think it's gone quite far enough. Paul, you've still got the subject. 7 seconds. Appearing in Panto, starting now.
The first pantomime I saw was at the London Palladium.
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition of pantomime.
Yes, you did say pantomime before. Right. And the subject on the card is Panto, hoisted on your own petard. Clement, you've got him with 3 seconds on appearing in Panto, starting now.
I would like to give a number of locations in which I did not.
Clement Freud, speaking as a whistle when gained the extra point, has increased his lead at the end of that round. And I've got to say, this is the most partisan audience we've ever had for just a minute. My goodness me, you've got your favourites. You're prepared to fight for them. Paul, it's your turn to begin, and this could be a very interesting round. Because the subject in front of me here is Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. Paul, it's fallen to you to start the ball rolling. From your great wealth and erudition and your incredible education, tell us something from your knowledge of science about Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. And Julian eventually challenged, yes.
Well, he didn't say anything, so...
Yeah.
I didn't hear you say now.
Hesitation.
I didn't say now.
You didn't...
Oh, I was so carried away with the subject and thinking of E equals MC squared.
It's quite ironic that we should have an argument about time, but if you... I was waiting for you to say your time starts now.
Yes, I always do say that. On this occasion, I slipped up. I didn't say it, did I?
Yeah, isn't that odd?
What amazing. I've been playing this game for 35 years, and it's the first time I've ever said it. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, we're all familiar with Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. I can see there's a woman in the front row nodding. E equals MC squared. And what a wonderfully evocatively formulaic thing that is. Who can forget the early days of the 20th century when Einstein turned to his wife, he says, "I've got it, Eureka," and he got out of the bath and Archimedes' plan of isosceles triangle was born. Indeed, I believe it was the great architect Isambard Kingdom Brunel who once said, apropos of absolutely nothing at all, that the distance between the moon and Scunthorpe was somewhere closer than the inside pocket of an airing cupboard as found back in the streets of Hull.
I think that spontaneous round of applause means they want you to have an extra point, whatever happens, Paul. But you got it. But Julian, you challenged.
Afraid it was sort of deviation.
Yes, he didn't stick to the theory of relativity.
Listen, how do you know?
I happen to know because his theory of relativity was on the basis that M is mass and energy is equal by mass.
That was his first theory.
No, that was his one. The one you quoted, E equals MC squared. The energy equals mass multiplied by the velocity of light in a vacuum, which is C squared. That... I did a bit of science at university. Julian, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, 19 seconds, starting now.
Well, what a bore he must have been. Had he nothing better to do than sit around painting his nails, saying, "Oh, I think I'll come up with a theory. How about relativity?" Then he went next door and he spoke to his neighbour, who said, "You know what you want to do? You want to sit down with a pen and paper and think about it long and hard, and then in years to come, you'll be remembered as the Albert Einstein."
So Julian Clary with a point in that round, and other points, of course, he's moved forward. He's just 1 point behind Clement Freud. He's just 1 point ahead of Jenny Eclair and a few points behind Paul Merton, our leader. So I think there's a fight for second place as we begin the last round, and it's with Clement Freud to begin, and the subject is my first words. Tell us something about that, Clement, starting now.
My first words when I went to my preparatory school was to say to the headmaster, "I would very much prefer not to be beaten by you, because my parents are against corporal punishment." My first words when I was in Parliament were fairly similar, but my first words in a bookmaker's shop were £4 each way on Pebbles, who is going to run in the 1,000 Guineas at Newmarket, written by P.
Julian Clary challenge.
Well, in the interest of light entertainment, I challenge it with deviation.
The audience are applauding because they enjoyed the challenge, but actually, according to the rules of Just a Minute, he wasn't actually deviating from my first words. He was keeping them very much in the forefront of his dissertation, saying his first words here and his first words there. So, Clement, I can't give it against you, and you stay with it on 30 seconds to go. My first words starting now.
My first words when I was asked to discuss Albert Einstein's theory of relativity was to say everything is pretty relative. Uncles, nephews, nieces, grandparents. And my first words when I was told that was total.
Paul Merton challenge.
A repetition of when I
When I
went
yes.
into a betting shop, when I talked about Einstein's theory of relativity, when I went to Paris.
Yes.
I don't want to rub it in. You know.
But I think you made your point.
I did,
quite
didn't
strong.
I?
Yes. 14 seconds, Paul. You tell us something about my first words starting now.
My very first words on a professional stage occurred at the Comedy Store in 1981, a very tough venue in the heart of London's West End, and I was quite nervous about how it was going to go, but luckily I was acclaimed.
Clement, you challenge.
Repetition of West.
West?
West End and West 1.
I didn't say West 1.
Yes, we did.
No, I didn't.
No, you said the heart of London. You didn't say West 1.
Didn't say West 1.
You meant West 1.
How on earth did you know that?
He was bluffing again, trying to get in with 1 second to go, and he's failed. So, Paul, you have the last second of this particular show, incidentally. My first words, starting now.
Zoological garden.
We have no more time to play Just a Minute, so I'll give you the final situation. Jenny Eclair, Julian Clary, and Clement Freud were almost equal in second place. There was only 1 point separating all three of them. But quite a number of points ahead, way out in the lead, was Paul Merton. So we say, Paul, this week, you are our winner. A round of applause for Paul. And it only remains for me to say thank you to our four intrepid players of the game, Paul Merton, Julian Clary, Jenny Eclair, and Clement Freud. We also thank Janet Staplehurst, who's helped me keep the score. She's blown a whistle so excellently when the 60 seconds was up. And, of course, we are grateful to our producer and director, that is Claire Jones, and we're grateful or indebted to the creator of this game, Ian Messiter, and we are deeply indebted to this lovely audience here in this lovely city of Brighton, who have cheered us on our way and interrupted whenever they could. They've been a lovely audience, from our panel, from me, Nicholas Parsons. Goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Bye. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners who tune in throughout the world, and also to welcome to the show four exciting and vibrant personalities who have come here to pit their wits and their verbal dexterity against each other as they try and speak on Just a Minute, and in Just a Minute, without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And they are Tony Hawkes, Sue Perkins, Tim Rice, and Ross Noble. Will you please welcome all four of them? Thank you. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score and blow her policeman's whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the delightful and famous City of Varieties in the heart of Leeds in the beautiful county of Yorkshire. And we have before us an exciting, throbbing, White Rose County audience who are ready to cheer us on our way as we start the show this week with Tony Hawks. Tony, the subject is very apt for the City of Varieties, the good old days. Tell us something about the good old days in just a minute, Tony, starting now.
Well, how appropriate that I'm given this subject. We are in the City Varieties Theatre, where the magnificent show The Good Old Days came in the 70s on BBC One, I think it was, with Leonard Sachs. He was the master of ceremonies, and he would introduce an act using extraordinarily long words, and the audience would get so excited they'd scream and jump about and wet themselves like they're in a creche.
Ross Noble is challenged.
Deviation, isn't it? Wasn't the audience just full of pensioners?
That's probably why they were wetting themselves.
But they weren't exactly...
Ross, what is your challenge within the rules?
They weren't exactly jumping about.
So have you a challenge within the rules of just a minute?
No, not really.
No. Give him a bonus point because we enjoy the interruption. But Tony Hawks gets a point because it's an incorrect challenge, and he keeps the subject, and there are 36 seconds available. The good old days starting now.
A lot of the top variety stars.
Tim Rice challenge.
Repeat of variety.
We had variety before.
I thought I said City Varieties.
You did indeed.
A quibble, a quibble.
Yes, but the audience were listening. This is what we were testing, and you've obviously brought your friends in with you as well. So, Tony, another incorrect challenge. You keep the subject, 34 seconds, the good old days, starting now.
Morecambe and Wise probably appeared here. Nicholas Parsons, our esteemed chairman, probably did. That's why the place...
Tim Rice challenge.
Two probablys.
Probablys, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Your esteemed chairman did appear here, but it was not in the good old days. It was doing my own show.
Before then, God.
The good old prehistoric days.
Good old prehistoric. Tim, you had a correct challenge. You had the good old days. You have 28 seconds starting now.
The good old days. Bobby V. Rydell. Johnny Tillotson. Several other classic stars of American rock and roll. Yorkshire winning the County Cricket Championship. How long ago that seems. Mivvy lollipops. Laurel and Hardy down at the Flicks. These are just some of the things that come to me when I think of the good old days, and a tear springs to my eye. And also...
Tony, challenge.
Deviation, he's not crying.
He's not crying, but I think he was speaking metaphorically, as I understand it. So I don't think it was a legitimate challenge within the rules of just a minute. So, Tim, you have a point for an incorrect challenge from Tony. 3 seconds to go. The good old days starting now.
Leeds United winning the league championship.
Well... there's a player who knows how to ingratiate himself with the audience, right? Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point, and that occasion, of course, was Tim Rice, who has got 4 points at the end of the round. Tony Hawks is following in 2, Ross Noble with 1, Sue Perkins has yet to score, but it is her turn to begin, and Sue, the subject is Peter Pan. Tell us something about Peter Pan in just a minute, starting now.
Peter Pan was a boy who didn't want to grow up. A little bit like the modern-day Keith Chegwin, but without the nudity, thankfully. Born in the very wealthy borough of Kensington, Chelsea, he disappeared one evening and strangely social services were not called. He then went on to prance round with a small girl called Tinkerbell, but not happy with his underground exploits with pirates such as Smee and a man with a strange clawed hand, he used to nip into the chambers of other children and drag them along with him. One night, John was enjoying a restful kip when suddenly through his window a small elfin child appeared. "Hello," he said. "I've come to take you away from the drudgery of school and football and take you into a netherworld of madness."
And Ross has challenged.
No, I didn't.
Well, your light came on.
Oh, did it? Oh, I must have pressed it by And the thing was, I was really enjoying it. I think, actually, there was a repetition of small child and small...
I think there was.
Yeah, a small girl. I think it was a fairy.
Yeah, yes, and then take away as well.
So, what? I didn't want the challenge, it had my finger. That. I was quite happy listening to the story.
Right,
but
Ross,
you did say a small
you
try.
can take it if you wish.
Oh, go on then.
Go on. All right. You have a point. You have 19 seconds. You have Peter Pan starting now.
Somebody once accused me of having a Peter Pan complex. By this, I thought it meant the boy who couldn't grow up. It did, in fact, mean that I enjoyed wearing tights.
Tim...
Let him continue with that story.
No, I think
please.
he stopped him just in time.
Yeah, pretty much.
There were
Tim Rice, you challenged first.
Two
Yes.
means.
That's right. Correct challenge. Another point to you, Tim. And 12 seconds. Peter Pan starting now.
I prefer Peter Pan.
Tony, you challenge.
Yes, deviation. He's talking about Peter Ban. Who we don't want to hear about.
I haven't finished. I prefer Peter Pan to Peter
Oriental
Pan.
martial artist.
Right. Tony, let's hear from you on Peter Pan, or about Peter Pan. 10 seconds starting now.
Peter Pan was keen on green tights and flying. Whenever I do that, I get thrown off the aircraft, which doesn't seem fair in many ways. Tinkerbell had quite a crush.
Tony Hawks then speaking as the whistle went, gain that extra point, and others in the round. He's now taken the lead, equal with Tim Rice, followed by Ross Noble and Sue Perkins. And Tim Rice, it's your turn to begin. The subject is bestsellers. Tell us something about bestsellers in just a minute, starting now.
The bestsellers are to be found way underground, in the best houses, and they contain the best wine, red, white, rosé, champers. This is the quality of a great cellar. And I all...
Ross, you challenge.
It's the Peter Pan syndrome.
Right. We call that hesitation. 43 seconds available. Bestsellers with you, Ross, starting now.
I think that the bestsellers was probably his work in the Pink Panther films. I mean, the way he...
Tim.
Definite hesitation.
Well, it was a similar hesitation to yours. So
Well, yeah,
yes.
I thought it was actually
That's right.
worse
But-
than mine.
You have to rub it in and say, definite hesitation. I mean, hesitation or not, and leave the chairman to judge. I can get quite pompous if I want to. It's the role of a chairman.
Noise, ooh, in the city varieties.
Yeah.
Just like, ooh. Long word. Ooh.
Right. 37 seconds, Tim. Bestsellers starting now.
Best-selling books are always controversial. Is it important to unload hundreds of millions of...
Sue Perkins.
There was a slight hesitation over hundreds.
I was emphasising the word.
I think there was a definite hesitation.
I don't know who's running the game, Ross Noble, Sue Perkins, or the audience, but Sue, we will give you the benefit of the doubt. 31 seconds on bestsellers starting now.
My favourite bestseller writer has to be Jackie Collins, who always sets her work in the heart of Hollywood, where inevitably a man called Lancelot, who happens to be a tennis professional, ends up working his way round the wealthy women of said area. Often his family history is checkered with divorce, possibly incest, depending on whether she's hoping for large sales in her own country. His forearm grip is good, we're told that repeatedly, and every page or so we're treated to the word member, which crops up with frightening regularity.
Well, Sue, you may have fewer points than the rest of the team, but you've certainly got bigger applause from this audience. They're rooting
charity
for you.
deal we're
Yes,
on.
yes, and you got the extra point for speaking as the whistle went, and you have leapt forward. But you're still in fourth place. You're just a few points behind Ross Noble and Tim Rice, who are equal in second place. Our leader is still Tony Hawks. And Tony, your turn to begin. The subject is my favourite fairy tale. Tell us something about your favourite, or well, you can take the subject any way you like. My favourite fairy tale, starting now.
I'm not exactly sure what my favourite fairy tale is, although...
Tim Rice.
Well, get off.
All right, give Tim a bonus point because they enjoyed the interruption. Tony gets a point because he was actually interrupted incorrectly, and he continues with my favourite fairy tale, 57 seconds starting now.
I'm pretty certain by the end of this 57-second period that I will be sure which fairy tale it is, because I'm going to discuss it openly with you in an honest manner. No secrets. I'll have your bear. Hello.
Tim challenged.
That was complete collapse of Start Party.
It was hesitation. So, 44 seconds, Tim. My favourite fairy tale starting now.
My favourite fairy tale is the very well-known story of Peter Pan, who is a disgusting old man who wants to stay in that very venerable state for as long as possible. He has some truly disgusting adventures en route, involving strange men with hooks and a lot of dodgy Indians. Red Indians, that is.
Tony, yes.
Yes, a repetition of Indians.
Right. 21 seconds, Tony. My favourite fairy tale starting now.
Most fairy tales are really irritating because they used to end with the words, "They lived happily ever after." And this is just the beginning of the story. The castle they've moved in has probably got leaks coming through the ceiling, subsidence underneath, they can't pay their mortgage, they get eating disorders, it's miserable. We want to know the story after.
Tony Hawks kept going till the whistle, gained an extra point, and with others in the round, he's increased his lead. And Ross, it's your turn to begin. The subject, the Industrial Revolution. Very apt for a big industrial place like Leeds, but tell us something about it in this game starting now.
I really wish that I'd paid more attention in school when we'd been learning about the Industrial Revolution, as I know virtually nothing. The one thing that I am aware of, though, is that looms were very popular back in those days. I'd like nothing more than the large device that makes the fabric, and especially the small children that crawled inside to free the jammed workings of that particular machine. The little fingers would go in there and they'd be plucking away, and sometimes severed, causing blood to squirt across, changing the colour of the garments that were being bought.
Somebody admits he doesn't know anything about it. He did jolly well. He kept going for 32 seconds on the Industrial Revolution. Yes.
Yay.
And then Sue Perkins challenged. And what was your challenge, Sue?
Hesitation.
Yes, there was more than one, but it was... You've got in there?
But they were all tacked together into one
I
big
know.
one, which is good, isn't it?
But they loved what you did so much they kept you, let you go on. 28 seconds now available. The Industrial Revolution, Sue, starting now.
My favourite thing about the Industrial Revolution was the spinning jenny, where one poor woman from a local mining village was forced to endlessly rotate time on...
Challenge.
Didn't she say woman before?
No, she hasn't spoken before on this subject. 19 seconds, Sue. Another point to you. Industrial Revolution starting now.
As I said.
Tim, challenge.
Hesitation.
No.
But in that case, she was about to repeat something. Because she said, "As I said."
She was.
But I wouldn't have used the same words.
Something. In different words.
Let's just see if she can do it, though, Nicola. I got me little
She's
finger.
got another point, and she has 18 and a half seconds on the Industrial Revolution starting now.
The best thing about the Industrial Revolution was the invention of buzzers, where people could randomly interject and claim you'd said things that perhaps you might have done 3 weeks ago.
Tony Hawk's the challenge.
Actually, the way you started the first time, you said the best thing about the Industrial Revolution were those Jenny things. So repetition of the best thing.
Of the best. Well, listen, Tony, yes. 11 seconds, Tony, on the Industrial Revolution starting now.
The Industrial Revolution bears very little resemblance to the Russian Revolution. Hardly any Bolsheviks were involved, and Russian speaking was at a minimum.
Tony Hawks was speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he's increased his lead. And Tim Rice, your turn to begin. The subject is the blues. I'm sure something close to your heart, but tell us about it in just a minute, starting now.
The thing about the blues is that the second line is always exactly the same as the first. So if your blues singer warbles, "Well, I woke up this morning, Lucille was not in town," you know that the subsequent stanza is going to be precisely what you just...
Tony Hawks said challenge.
I'm going to be very picky here.
And
Because it's a stanza would be 4 lines.
You are correct. You see, there's a musical man talking
I
as
hadn't
well.
finished. I was going to say the subsequent stanza, i.e. the next group of 4 lines, would also have the same repetition of 2 lines.
I'm sure you were, Tim, but I think you didn't establish that in time. 39 seconds for you, Tony, on the blues, starting now.
Blue is the colour, football is the game, we're all together and winning is our aim. A marvellous stanza sung by the Chelsea football. Whereas I like that team very much, but most of them don't seem to be from England at all, which seems a shame. I remember the days when you used to turn up to a football match and you could see people playing...
Tim Rice challenge.
2 footballs,
There were
you
2 footballs.
swine.
Yes. Tim, you got a correct challenge. You have the blues again. 20 seconds starting now.
The blues is something which can hit all of us at any time, even in a beautiful place like this. In a wonderful city like Leeds, it is still possible to be melancholy, to be glum, but not often.
Tony challenge. Why?
Repetition of like and also repetition of to be. He sort of...
I think you should rub it in, actually. Just one will do. Right. Correct challenge. 8 seconds. The blues, Tony, starting now.
I woke up this morning and that was the same as the previous...
Tim challenged.
I mean, that was hesitation.
That was hesitation, Tim, yes. 4 seconds for you on the blues, starting now.
I went to bed this evening.
Ross challenged.
I didn't. It was repetition of I, but that's just not fair, is it?
No, I know it isn't.
Oh, repetition of that tune.
Ross, a very subtle comment and challenge, but remember, this is radio, and we're working in the term of sound. It's what they say, not a repetitious thought.
I can't believe I'm actually picking up Tim Rice on that. That really...
Yeah.
That's...
We will give
They
you...
weren't different keys at all.
I was in A flat minor for the. I woke up this morning and I went to bed this evening. Was in B flat.
And I recognise it too. But the point is, Ross, because it was a very clever idea of yours, we give you a bonus point for that.
Thank you for that.
But as he didn't repeat any words, and therefore we go on language in just a minute, Tim has another point, and he has 3 seconds to continue with the blues starting now.
Leeds United Football Club always seems to.
So Tim Rice had a number of points with the Blues, including one for speaking as the whistle went, and has moved forward again, and he is now in 2nd place, that's behind Tony Hawkes, just ahead of Sue Perkins, who's in 3rd place, then Ross Noble, and Tony, your turn to begin. The subject is sitting ducks. Tell us something about sitting ducks in just a minute, starting now.
If ducks had theatres or went to big outdoor events, somebody would have to be in charge of sitting the ducks. Because if a duck was standing, the ones behind wouldn't be able to see the event at all, which would be a travesty of justice, especially if they'd been paying through the nose for their ticket. But, in a way, we're all sitting ducks here this evening, seated as we are, beautifully at our chairs, talking for a minute, when anyone can dive in at any given moment, buzz their buzzers.
And Sue Perkins challenge.
There were 2 hours, about an hour before I buzzed.
Yes. Right, well, listen, Sue, you have 31 seconds. Sitting ducks starting now.
If you're standing here as I am, or even sitting, which is what I am now. Excuse me, my taxi's outside.
Well, deviation.
Yes, I think we
Unless
do
she's
know,
extremely
even
small,
all the listeners around the world,
she's sitting.
know that we are seated here, and in fact I've established it quite at the beginning of the show. So that's a correct challenge, Tim. You have 28 seconds on sitting ducks starting now.
Ducks only really sit when they're on water. I can tell you this because I've been studying these feathered creatures. Actually, I don't know why I said that phrase, because I can use the word ducks as often as I jolly well like. Ducks, 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 ducks.
Tony challenge.
This is going to be an extraordinarily clever challenge.
Yes. And I know exactly what it is.
The word ducks is on the title,
Yes,
so he can
and he
say
said
that.
duck, duck, duck.
Yes, so it's repetition of duck, duck.
No. I can't give you 2 points for repetition of duck, duck, as opposed to 1 point for repetition of the word duck. So anyway, Tony, you have 15 seconds. You've got the subject back. Sitting ducks starting now.
I've seen ducks sitting not in the water because when they have their eggs, they like to place themselves over them to keep the duck eggs warm. Now, I'm going too quickly probably for some of you, but it's how it works.
You actually had them in awe there. I don't know why they thought it was so incredible information you were imparting there. But, Tony, you've increased your lead at the end of the round. Then Tim Rice and Sue and Ross and Sue Perkins, your turn to begin. The subject, sleepwalking. Tell us something about sleepwalking in just a minute, starting now.
Everyone knows that sleepwalking involves wearing a ridiculous hooded nightgown and cap and walking through to your brother's room where you disturb him. My plan is this: why not try sleepwalking in the daytime? Visit your local grocer's, pilfer some goods, and as he tries to arrest you, say, "I'm sorry, I have just been asleep." It worked for me, certainly, until after 6 or 7 times I was caught red-handed by the peelers and sent down for 12 months. Other uses of sleepwalking: if you've become bored of your partner and wish to assassinate them in the middle of the night, it works as an excellent excuse. I was unconscious, Governor. Once again, I was sent down for another 12 months.
Tim Rice challenge.
Sent down and 12
Sent
months.
down 12 months as well.
Painful
Right.
memories.
24 seconds. Tim, you have got the subject of sleepwalking starting now.
Some people seem to sleepwalk through life. It seems that... Oh. Sorry, I was falling asleep.
Oh, that's right. Sleepwalking to the subject, and Tony got in first. 20 seconds. Sleepwalking, Tony, starting now. Sorry.
I'm quite keen on sponsored sleepwalking. I go up to people with a little form, ask them if they're prepared to sponsor me for this event.
Tim
Two
Charles.
sponsors.
No, it's sponsor sleepwalking and sponsor me for the event.
I'm terribly sorry. I'm
That's all right.
completely wrong. Very well chaired.
No, that's all right. Tony has another incorrect challenge and keeps the subject of sleepwalking 11 seconds starting now.
Sleep jogging is another fantastic activity. I do this round the park and people think how impressive it is, especially since I'm dreaming at the time. But I am having...
Tony Hawks, speaking as a whistle, went gained some more points and has increased his lead. And we're moving in to the final round. So, Ross, it's your turn to begin. The subject is the pyramids. Tell us something. They're giving you the Industrial Revolution and other pyramids. They're really loading it onto you, aren't they, Ross? 60 seconds, as usual, starting now.
I recently visited the pyramids in Giza. The reason they're called this is because they were built by Cockneys. A lot of people can't understand how they put the stones up there. Well, it was done with transit vans and Capris, pulling them all about the place. The thing about the pyramids is that deep beneath the stones there would be there'd be the bars. Yeah, that's right.
The bars.
Have you ever heard of
Perkins
the
got in
bars?
first.
I thought you said Tapau. Deep beneath the stones, there'd be Tapau.
Yeah.
Carol Decker is buried beneath the sacred rock.
Hesitation, Sue. 40 seconds for you. The pyramids starting now.
I'm obsessed with the riddle of the Sphinx. What would be the question this strange winged creature...
Tim Challenge.
There's a deviation. The Sphinx is down the road from the pyramids. We're talking about the pyramids.
Where's Egypt in general? I mean...
I've
It's
never
not
been.
the topic. I'm
There-
sorry. I'm sorry.
I
I
think-
came up here to play a game. Those are the rules.
She hadn't been going for long enough. She could have been going from the Sphinx and the riddle to the pyramids.
The riddle was, how do you get from here down the road to the pyramids? So the Sphinx
You don't have to justify it, Sue, because I'm with you on this one.
There's a tram link, I think.
I think if she'd gone a bit longer and hadn't brought in the pyramids, then she would be deviating. But I don't think you gave her a chance. So, Sue, you have 39 seconds. You have the pyramids still starting now.
Pyramids is one of the wonders of the world, the eighth wonder being Nicholas Parsons in The Nude, which I was privileged to see once, but only fleetingly, alas.
Tony Challenge.
That's about the 500th wonder, I'm afraid.
You see the reaction you get, Tony?
There were a lot of wonders, weren't there?
You can go too far on occasion. So you've challenged to get a cheap laugh.
Yeah.
And all that happens is Sue, who was interrupted, gets a point.
Oh, dear.
And she has...
I'm still speaking about the pyramids.
Yes, and you've got 26
It
seconds
hasn't started yet.
starting now.
Based loosely on a design by the Toblerone manufacturers, the early Egyptians decided that rather go for a cubist design, they'd opt for this strange point.
Tim Challenge.
Design.
Yes.
Twice.
There's two designs there. So, Tim, you have got in on the pyramids. And 19 seconds starting now.
The pyramids are absolutely gripping. I warmly recommend a visit. I went there once and hit my head on Tutankhamun's ceiling.
Ross's challenge.
Tutankhamun's in the Valley of the Kings and not
That's right.
in the pyramids. That was the only day I turned up for school. Was the pyramids.
Well, it was worth it, wasn't it? You got a point in
Certainly
just a
was.
minute from that one day at school. Right. And you've got another point now, and you have the pyramids 11 seconds starting now.
The pyramids are large, impressive buildings which the pharaohs would be buried inside. Only the richest were allowed in. A little bit like Ritzy's nightclub here in Leeds. The only difference is...
So Ross Noble, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He has moved forward, but he's still only in 4th place. But his value is incomparable. But they've all got lots of points, actually. Sue's in 2nd place, only 2 behind Tim Rice. But justifiably, with all the points he gains, you can understand that Tony Hawk's got the lead. So our winner is Tony Hawk's. A round of applause. We do hope you have enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and it only means to say thank you to our 4 vibrant players of the game, Tony Hawk, Sue Perkins, Tim Rice and Ross Noble. I thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score, blowing her whistle, and of course our producer, Claire Jones. From our audience here in Leeds, from our panel, from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Boom. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure not only to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 exciting and stimulating personalities who are going to play Just a Minute. We welcome back with great pleasure a man who plays the game with tremendous verve and panache, that's Paul Merton, someone who plays it with great skill and discipline, that is Clement Freud, and someone who plays it with great fun and exuberance, that is Steve Frost, and someone who's never played the game before, the delightful and talented Liza Tarbuck. And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me run the stopwatch and blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Radio Theatre in the heart of Broadcasting House. And we have a fine cosmopolitan and metropolitan audience in front of us, ready to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Paul Merton. Paul, a wonderful subject for starters, rhubarb. Tell us something about rhubarb in this game, starting now.
I don't think you should have rhubarb for starters. It's more of an afters, in my view. It's one of those words that apparently extras in the back of films are encouraged to mouth over and again because it gives the impression that conversation is going on. So they say rhubarb, 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 rhubarb. It's also a vocal exercise that some performers use before they give a performance. Rhubarb. Rhubarb, 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 rhubarb. I think you're getting the idea of it. And it's quite a clever way of repeating yourself over and again, which I've repeated.
Clement Freud, you challenged.
Repetition of over.
So you have a correct challenge, so you take over the subject. You get a point, of course, for a correct challenge, and there are 22 seconds left. The subject is rhubarb, and you start now.
Rhubarb comes from Siberia, which not many people know, in Mongolia, which is not very far from...
Steve Frost, you've challenged.
Repetition of not. Not many people know, and...
Yeah, well, you're quite right. It's been a tough challenge, but I mean...
Are we here to play the game, or what?
No, you're right.
If I wanted to just sit around talking and get an ask, we could be in the pub.
Yeah, that's right. No, Steve, I was just provoking you there, and I got a good response. Right. Steve! Good challenge. Well, not a good challenge, but a challenge which is correct. So you have a point for that. And you have 14 seconds on rhubarb starting now.
If you put 2 sticks of rhubarb under your bed at night, if you've got any warts, they'll go away.
Paul Merton challenge.
Repetition of if.
Steve? Maybe you see now what you've started. There are 8 seconds for you to tell us something about rhubarb, Paul, having got another point, of course, starting now.
Rhubarb crumble is my favourite dessert, and let me take you through the various stages of its preparation. First, you must...
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Paul Merton, who at the end of that round has also got the lead. As you can imagine, he's got 3 points. Steve's got 1. Clement's got 1. Liza hasn't got 1 yet, but it's her turn to begin. And Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And, a very apt subject for you. It's sex appeal.
You are kind.
Yes, specially chosen for you. So will you tell us something about sex appeal in just a minute, starting now?
Sex appeal is the power of attracting the opposite sex. It could be anything. Personally, my thoughts are it's a lot to do with smell, and I'm talking about pheromones there, but there is the thought that in fact could boil down to plain old looks. I wonder what everyone here would think about sex appeal. I'm not entirely sure what their choices would be. Would they go for a leggy blonde, perhaps? Maybe they'd like something...
Steve Frost, you challenge.
Yes, I would.
And have you got a challenge when the rules are just a minute?
No, you just got me going now.
Well, Liza, they've left you out lightly, so you've got
Very
a point for an incorrect challenge. You keep the subject. You have 32 seconds sex appeal starting now.
Other people, of course, might go for something a little bit more full-bodied and plumper, which, frankly, I applaud. And thank the Lord for those good burgers of the country.
Paul Merton challenge.
There was a bit of a hesitation
There
there.
was a definite there.
I'll bow to that.
And, Paul, you got in with the correct challenge, 21 seconds. Tell us something about sex appeal starting now.
One of the first film stars in early Hollywood was...
Steve, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, right, Steve. You have the subject now. 17 seconds. Sex appeal starting now.
I had a sex appeal once. I stood outside my bedroom with a bucket. I made at least £17.50. It was a very good night. Not the sex, of course, but the money that I did actually get in the plastic...
Clement Freud challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. Another point to you, Clement. 6 seconds. Let's hear from you on sex appeal starting now.
You put in the personal column of the Times an appeal saying, I need sex. And you give a box number.
So Clement Freud speaking as the whistle went gained that extra point, and he's now equal in the lead with Paul Merton, followed by the other two. And Steve Frost, your turn to begin. I don't know whether they've chosen this because you are an erudite individual, but it's the life and works of Charles Dickens.
Good night.
I don't know whether it's your favourite subject, but try and speak on it in this game starting now.
This may come as a bit of a shock to people, but I actually haven't read one of his books, but I've seen all the films on TV and at the cinema, and frankly, I'm not impressed. People with stupid names like Becky Sniffy Knocky, he must have been on drugs to write names like that. But of course, he did live in Broadstairs, which is in Kent, and there's a house there called Bleak House, which is the name of one of his novels, which I had to study for my A-levels, and I failed because I never read it, as I said earlier on at the beginning of this very boring tirade I'm doing for you now. Dickens, of course, was a woman, and we all know that in his lesbian relationship with his wife, whose name I can't remember at the moment, didn't go very far because she left and went to America, where he followed and made a fortune on the lecture circuit, doing talks about their sex life, and made a lot of money from the appeal, which he did the same as me with that aforementioned plastic vessel, which he put outside the room where you sleep with the person of the opposite sex. Except, of course, it wasn't the other side of the...
Well, for someone who didn't want the subject, you went magnificently for 56 seconds. Yeah, but Liza Tarbuck got in first. Liza, what is your challenge?
Hesitation, in
yes, it was hesitation.
I think that's fair enough,
yes,
isn't
so
it?
you have 4 minutes, Lisa.
4 minutes?
Yes, I do that sometimes to make sure you and the audience are awake. And 4 seconds. Tell us something about the life and works of Charles Dickens, starting now.
I remember reading...
And Clement Freud challenge.
Hesitation.
He's winding you up. No, Lisa, you have another point. And you still have the subject. There are 3 seconds on the life and works of Charles Dickens, starting now.
I once tried to fumble my way through hard...
So Liza was speaking then as the whistle went, and with the other point in that round, she has leapt forward, and she's now actually in the lead, ahead of Clement Freud and Paul Merton. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject is sweet revenge. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Sweet revenge is something the pastry chef does when customers are or have behaved extremely badly. And normally he would take, say, a gooseberry fool and put arsenic into it. Sherry trifle with ptomaine is another popular revenge. But of all the sweets that I don't like to be revenged upon, rice pudding with H2SO4, which is sulfuric acid, is probably the sweetest of all revenges, makes people extremely sick, and cause them to complain to the environmental health officer on the grounds that they...
Paul Merton challenge.
If you put sulfuric acid in the rice pudding, wouldn't that make a hole in the plate? And then the table, and then the floor?
I don't think you would be alive to complain to the health authorities afterwards.
I don't think you would, no.
No, but you
Can
didn't
we
challenge
get
for
to
that.
in good time?
Well,
So what is your challenge when the rules of
It's
just a minute?
deviation. I don't think you can put sulfuric acid in the rice pudding and get away with it.
Well, of course you couldn't get away with any of that. But I mean, you didn't challenge for that. And anyway, it's a devious thought.
Well, I think you could put arsenic in trifle, and I think you could get away with that. But sulfuric acid and rice pudding, I think, is revenge too far.
Well, that's a clever challenge, but you've given me this difficult decision because, strictly speaking, within the rules of just a minute, he was not deviating because he was talking about something quite bizarre and probably quite impossible to achieve, but it is accurate verbally within the rules of just a minute. So I have to disagree with you and say, Clement, you have another point, and you have 19 seconds on sweet revenge starting now.
Revenge is sweet is sort of silly saying that you get. For instance, should you come home and find your wife in bed with a milkman, you go out and kick the horse. That would be the sort of typically stupid, idiotic...
Paul challenge.
When did milkmen last have horses? This is the 21st century. It's the year 2001.
That is an ageist.
Yes, it does. It does age him a bit, but that's now, he is deviating because milkmen do not have horses
They
now.
don't. You can put sulfuric acid in rice pudding, but a milkman can't have a horse.
You can put it in, but it's a devious thought, but it's not devious within the rules of just a minute, what your other thing was. 6 seconds for you, Paul, on sweet revenge, starting now.
I always thought milkmen should have cows to drag their floats around, because then there's an endless supply.
Paul Clement Freud's challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
Because if milkmen don't have horses, they certainly don't have cows.
He didn't say that the milkman had a cow.
I said I think they should.
He said he thinks they should.
Yeah.
The same way you put sulfuric acid
if you put
into
sulfuric
your
acid in rice pudding, milkmen can have cows.
Yes. He said, I think you should, or you could. They give me impossible decisions, but I try to stick within the rules of just a minute. So, Paul, another point to you. 2 seconds more on sweet revenge, starting now.
And I said the apple turnover will never walk again.
So Paul Merton, speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point, and he's gone back into the lead. He's 2 ahead of Clement Freud, and 3 ahead of Liza Tarbuck, and 6 ahead of Steve Frost. And Liza Tarbuck, your turn to begin. And the subject is Big Brother. Tell us something about Big Brother in this game, starting now.
I don't actually have a big brother, but I have got a little brother who is quite big. He's taller than me, and he's certainly broader than I am, which makes him a big brother in a sort of little brother way.
Clement Freud's challenge.
Mr. Freud.
Yes.
Repetition of little.
There are
You're
too many
quite
littles,
right.
I'm afraid. Yes. So you've got the audience with you, Lisa. They're very sad about that. 50 seconds for you, Clement, on Big Brother, starting now.
If I had a big brother, I would like him to be exactly like Liza Tarbuck.
Lisa, you pressed your buzzer.
Actually, highly offensive.
But he hesitated.
He hesitated.
He
Of course
hesitated,
did.
Lisa.
Of course he did.
My gosh, you were sharp there. So you got the assembly back, Lisa. Another point, of course. Big Brother still with you, or back with you. 42 seconds starting now.
I think the Big Brother alluded to in this particular situation could well be the TV programme that has become a sort of zeitgeist type of marker for the country at the moment, with several people talking and discussing it, filling the newspapers every single day, and I have to admit, I am hooked on it. I find myself watching people asleep in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, as if I'm one of the bloomin' flatmates, which of course I plainly am not one of the flatmates, because I'm...
Paul Merton.
Oh, I see twice.
Sadly, repetition of flatmates.
And there were too many flatmates, yes. So 14 seconds for you, Paul, with Big Brother starting now.
There was a famous film made in 1984 featuring Big Brother, and the actor that was cast as Big Brother was a comedian who was on the cabaret circuit at the time, so it completely ruined, for me, the movie, the air of thrilling...
No, you can clap. Clement, you challenged as the whistle went. I don't know what to do. I'll give you the benefit of it. Go on, what was your challenge?
He hesitated.
No, he didn't.
Yes,
So he got
did.
nothing. So he's got another point and one for speaking when the whistle went. Steve Frost, your turn to begin, and the subject now is elbow grease. Tell us something about that in just a minute, starting now.
If you want to get something cleaned properly, you've got to use elbow grease. You can't buy it in a shop. It doesn't come in a bottle. It comes from within, the spirit of your soul.
Paul Merton challenge.
Surely it comes from the elbow. It doesn't come from the spirit of your soul, it'd be soul grease. It's deviation.
No, I think he's speaking metaphorically.
He is, and that's deviation in my book.
It does not come from your elbow. It is a phrase that is used because they use
It doesn't come
your
from your soul, does it?
Yes, it comes from internally. That's what he was trying to express. I got the message there. He was expressing something that was an
Nicholas,
emotional
I
thing
can
that
speak
comes
for myself. He's right.
I try to help people, I try to defend them, I try to encourage them, and they destroyed all in a blow. So he said, you are right, Paul. There's 51 seconds. You tell us something about elbow grease, starting now.
Well, as Steve Frost says, it's something that comes from the soul rather than the elbow. And I think it is maybe perhaps the sort of thing that you should perhaps...
Clement Freud challenge. Perhaps. I would. 41 seconds, elbow grease with you, Clement, starting now.
To have sufficient elbow grease, you need a lot of elbow and a sufficiency of grease. Oil, butter, margarine. Utterly is quite a good thing. Or, I can't believe this is not. I can't tell you what it isn't, because that would be repetition. Elbow grease, if you have a sufficiency of it.
Steve Frost challenge.
Repetition, sufficiency there.
Sufficiency, yes. Yeah. What did you say, Clement?
You have said sufficiency twice.
You did say so. I thought he was trying to wriggle and say, I said sufficient the first time.
Twice.
No, I think it was sufficiency.
I didn't know you were listening.
Right, 17 seconds for you, Steve Frost, on elbow grease, starting now.
If you did actually get some grease on your elbow, you'd have to scrub it off using elbow grease. Therefore, there's a predicament, because you're using elbow grease to get rid of elbow grease. It just doesn't work. So I suggest a Brillo pad with some vodka rinsed through at 3:30 in the morning, just as you've woken up with a rabbit bouncing.
Well, at the end of that round, Steve Frost is speaking as the whistle went. He's moved forward. He's equal with Clement Freud in second place behind Paul Merton, and they're both ahead, or all of them are just ahead of Liza Tarbuck. Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is books I have read twice. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Let me begin with one book which I've not only read twice, but twice more than twice, and twice as much again, because it is my autobiography, which is called Freud Ego.
Liza Tarbuck has challenged you.
Deviation, surely. Twice, and twice again. He's read it more than twice, so he's off the subject. I want a strict twice one.
It's a subtle challenge, and I will give you the benefit of the doubt because you worked that one out so cleverly. and give you the subject with 49 seconds on
good.
books I have read twice, starting now.
I remember going back to Kill a Mockingbird, and that was a wonderful book. Read that twice. Gorgeous. I've also read Perfume twice, and of course I'm addicted to The Hobbit, which is a terrific read.
Steve Frost challenge.
Deviation, you sniff perfume.
But it's also the title of a book.
Lisa. I know it's a book. It's by Peter Suskind, is it?
Patrick Suskind,
Oh,
you're
so
right.
I read his
Can
book.
I go on a bit about my autobiography?
So you see, Steve, she was not deviating from the subject, and there are 37 seconds, Lisa, having got another point, to continue on books I have read twice, starting now.
There are several of the classics that I'd like to peruse again, but I haven't felt that I've had the...
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation, she hasn't read them twice.
Yes. Touché, he's got you on a subtle challenge again. So, Clement, you have the subject back, and there are 31 seconds, books I've read twice, starting now.
Freudego comes out on October the 18th.
Paul, you
October
challenge
the 18th.
first, yes.
Delayed publishing dates. Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. Well, might he hesitate having plugged the autobiography so unmercifully. 28 seconds, books I've read twice, Paul, starting now.
I suppose it is the mark of a book that you have really enjoyed. Biddy Liar, written by Keith Waterhouse in the late 50s, is a book that I've read more than once, and it made a big impact on me when I was about 16 or 17 years old, because it concerned a boy who wanted to be in show business, lived way out of London, couldn't figure out how he was ever going to achieve his ambition, and that meant a lot to me at the time, because although I lived near the capital, I was as like...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of lived.
Yes, you lived too much, I'm afraid, yes. And Clement, you cleverly got in with 2 seconds to go on books I've read twice, starting now.
It has 30 pages of pictures.
Paul Merton challenge.
Well, I buzzed because I was going to say deviation because he hasn't mentioned his autobiography. But in the buzz, he mentioned his autobiography.
So, alas, but it was a good attempt. We enjoyed the challenge. Give him bonus point. But, Clement, you get a point for being interrupted. And you have 1 more second on books I've read twice, starting now.
Freudego.
So, Clement Freud, with many points in the round, including 1 for speaking as the whistle went, has leapt forward. He's now only 1 point behind our leader, Paul Merton. They're both a little ahead of the other 2. And Lisa, your turn to begin. My favourite cocktail. Tell us something about that in just a minute, starting now.
If I'm hungry, I'll go for a Bloody Mary. Although if I'm not and I just want a drink for the devilment of it, I normally go for a vodka and orange, which of course is a screwdriver.
Steve Frost challenge.
She's making me thirsty. Can we go? Repetition, go for. There were 2 go for.
There were 2 go fors, yes. So, Steve, you got in with 50 seconds to tell us something about my favourite cocktail, starting now. Clement challenge.
Repetition.
Tell us of what, just so the audience know.
Glug.
No, I wouldn't give you a repetition of glug because he didn't come out of his mouth. That was a noise. So I'm afraid if you're not going to have him for hesitation...
This is a sound programme.
Yes, but you have to speak the words or make the sounds in order to...
He made the sound.
He didn't make any sound at all. He hesitated
glug, 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 glug,
outrageously. Poured a glass of water to give a background noise.
Whistle, Janet.
So, actually, if you'd had him for hesitation, I'd have given it to you, but you didn't. You had him for something else, which was wrong. So, Steve, you still have my favourite cocktail. Don't give me any more problems like that one. And 48 seconds starting now.
A White Russian. Kahlua, vodka, ice, with a black straw in it. Sip slowly, not guzzled.
Paul challenge.
No mention of a glass.
It doesn't matter. I had the picture and I assumed it was in a glass.
Well,
so,
I didn't assume that at all. Deviation.
No, I don't think he was deviating from the image he was creating, which you can assume it was in a glass or not. I don't think you have to mention the fact it was in a glass. It gets too pedantic for words, Oliver. Steve, another point to you. 41 seconds. Tell us more about my favourite cocktail, starting now.
The great thing about that particular cocktail is that you can drink it any time of the day. Morning, mid, that bit.
Paul.
Well, there was a bit of a hesitation.
Yes, you can have him for that one. Right.
That bit.
34 seconds. You tell us something about my favourite cocktail, starting now.
I don't really have a favourite cocktail. Oh, no, I do. I've just remembered. My favourite cocktail, without doubt, is a Singapore Sling. I once went to that particular place, and I had that drink, and it was...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of that.
You did emphasise that, so maybe it's fair. 23 seconds, Clement. My favourite cocktail, starting now.
Once upon a time, there was a male Rhode Island Red, and he lived in a farmyard and had lots of little friends who laid eggs because they were female chickens. He was a cock, and he loved in the late evening to gather his friends around him.
Paul, your challenge.
Repetition of Friends.
That's right, yes.
I'd say Friends.
It was going so slowly, the audience had fallen asleep, I wonder when he was going to get to the tail bit. I think it was coming up, but I think, Paul, you've got him with 1 second on my favourite cocktail, starting now.
Undoubtedly.
So to the end of that round, Paul Merton and Clement Freud are equal in the lead, and the other two are coming up behind, but a little way back. This is the last subject. It's wildlife. Clement, you begin. 60 seconds, starting now.
This is a pretty good expression of my modus vivendi, wildlife. I get up at about 8 o'clock in the morning, put on my slippers, and walk to the kitchen where a cup of tea and some grape nuts await me. I eat these with dark muscovado sugar, and then move on.
See, you challenge.
I'm going to go for deviation, because this is the quiet life, not wildlife, is it?
It is, yes. It's the image that he created of him walking through with just his slippers on and nothing else. I mean,
don't put that image in our head.
That was a devious idea, wasn't it? But no. That is not.
You assume there's a glass, but you don't assume there's any pyjamas.
Yes.
Perhaps it's just
I would
what
like
we
to
like
say
to
that
think about.
I know that Clement sleeps in the nude, but then again they might reveal.
Whoa.
I had no idea you knew each other so well. I do beg your pardon.
No, because it wasn't a challenge. Mine wasn't. I could
Is
assume
it true
that
about
or
his
not.
grape nuts as well?
You challenged about the glass, and therefore I had to interpret that. I didn't have to interpret it, I commented. And Steve, you have a correct challenge, because it's wildlife and not the quiet, sedate life of walking in the nude with your slippers on. 37 seconds for you, Steve, starting now.
Any animal that is not tamed and lives in the country is classified as wildlife. So those of you who didn't know, you do now.
Paul Merton challenge.
Bit of a hesitation.
There was definitely hesitation. Yes, he was waiting for the response. He got nothing. 27 seconds. You tell us something about wildlife, Paul, starting now.
I'm lucky enough to have a little house in the country, and there's all kinds of wildlife running around in the garden. If you get up very early in the morning, you'll see Clement Freud making his way from the summer house down to the cliff edge. We also have badgers, foxes, rabbits, the odd owl sometimes fly past, and I have seen an owl as well. An owl?
Clement, you challenge.
Hesitation of owl. Repetition.
He hesitated after he'd repeated owl. Yes, right, Clement. 8 seconds you've got in just before the end. Wildlife is back with you, starting now.
I jumped from one tree to another, swinging wildly in the branches while leaves brush my face.
Paul Merton challenge.
Should you be doing this in a nude?
It is very difficult in Wimpole Street as well, where he lives.
Swinging from tree to tree.
Yes,
you know where he lives. You know he sleeps in the nude.
1 second on wildlife, Paul, starting now.
Zoological garden.
So, Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. It now remains for me to give you the final situation. Liza Tarbuck, who's never played the game before, came and was magnificent on her first attempt. And she finished up equal with Steve Frost in third place. They were a few points behind Paul Merton, and Paul was only 1 point behind Clement Freud. So we do say, Clement, this week, you are our winner. It only remains for me to say thank you to our four delightful players of the game, Liza Tarbuck, Steve Frost, Clement Freud and Paul Merton, and also to thank this audience here in the Radio Theatre in London. I thank Janet Staplehurst for helping me with the watch and also blowing her whistle. And thank you to our producer, Claire Jones, and we're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created the show, which we enjoy so much, and we are indebted to our audience here in the Radio Theatre, who've cheered us on our way magnificently. From our audience, from our panel, from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Till then, cheerio.
And Just a Minute travels to the New Theatre, Cardiff, on the 7th of August, when the panellists will be Paul Merton, Graham Norton, Linda Smith and Clement Freud. To find out how to get tickets, you can call Radio 4 on 08700 100 400. That's 08700 100 400.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our listeners not only in this country, but throughout the world, and also to welcome to the show four highly talented and exciting players of the game who have all excelled themselves and distinguished themselves in various forms of comedy and humour. Will you welcome those four, Paul Merton, Julian Clary, Jenny Eclair and Clement Freud, all together? And as usual, I'm going to ask these four to speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score and blow a whistle when 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the elegant, beautiful Theatre Royal in that wonderful city of Brighton on the coast of Sussex. And we have And as you can hear, we have a vociferous, keen Brighton audience here representing this cosmopolitan area who are going to cheer us on our way. As we begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject in front of me is how to annoy the audience. You have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Before I start, I just have to make one announcement. Would everyone in the second row of the stalls please stand up? I'd be awfully grateful. And those sitting behind them, if the women could turn round and kiss the men. And you're not much
Paul
fun.
Merton has challenged you.
Did I detect a hesitation?
A hesitation, yes, more than one, and a long one. I think he was demonstrating ways to annoy the audience, but they were not responding. As this is radio and you can't see what's happening in our audience, I must tell you they did not respond. So either they were not annoyed, but anyway,
They were annoyed, that's why they didn't respond.
Yes. Anyway, that was hesitation, a correct challenge, so Paul, you get a point for that. You take over how to annoy the audience. 36 seconds available, starting now.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you in the capable hands of Nicholas Parsons. Could there be a more chilling sentence in the history of English theatre? Audiences blanch with horror and fear as those dreaded words crash upon their ears. What have we done to deserve it? Tearing their hair out, desperately trying to get through the doors. They're locked, it's too late. This has happened before. Another way of annoying the audience is to actually pick on somebody in the front row, like you, sir, and say, you're a bit bald, aren't you? Would you mind moving your head? The light's shining right in my eyes. That sort of thing.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Paul Merton. And, of course, at the end of that round, he's the only one to have scored anything. Jenny Eclair, will you take the next round?
Yes,
the subject is the advantages of being a woman. Oh, I'm longing when the men get this subject. Right, 60 seconds starting now.
Where do I start? We have a secondary set of sexual organs, our breasts, which attract men like bees around a honey pot and jiggle attractively when we jog. Oh, the sheer barefaced cheek of being a woman. I love it so much. When we steal things, we can blame it on our hormones. And even if we don't feel like going out shoplifting, we can just stay under the duvet, crying, eating chocolate, and watching daytime television, which was invented just for us. Women don't have to do brave things. We don't have to go down and tackle the knife-wielding burglar. Neither do we have to wash our cars.
Paul Merton has challenged you.
What?
A repetition of how we have to.
How we have to.
Yeah.
You don't...
You're such a game spoiler.
We are playing, audience, we are playing Just a Minute. And there are certain rules. Just because you enjoy what Jenny said, you can't have it all to yourself and only.
You watch.
So it was a correct challenge. So, Paul, you get a point for that, of course, and you take over the subject. There are 19 seconds for you to tell us something about the advantages of being a woman, starting now.
Well, of course, the high-pitched voice is an extraordinary advantage. You can cut through any conversation in a crowded room with some load of old rubbish that's just come into your head about some nonsense or other. And also, the shrill tones are such...
Jenny, you've challenged.
It's for his own good.
This is the first time, and actually, that an audience has taken over the show. And I mean, you are so fickle. A minute ago, you were applauding him when he was lambasting me and being so rude. And now, of course, you can't stand it because of what he said. But, oh, the fickleness of Brighton. But I've discovered it personally before. Jenny, you have a point for a correct challenge.
What was the challenge?
I don't know what it was, but she's got it. And she has 2 seconds on the advantage of being a woman, starting now.
I'm far too premenstrual to argue with Paul.
Jenny Eclair was then speaking as that whistle went and gained that extra point. She's now got 3 points. Paul Merton's got 4, and the other 2 have yet to score. And Clement, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is Fat Boy Slim. I don't know why you're laughing. It's obviously been chosen because of your knowledge of pop world. 60 seconds as usual. Fat Boy Slim Clement starting now.
In the 1960s, a pathologist in Brockenhurst in the New Forest dug up a severed leg, picked it up and said, "This is a fat boy's limb." Everyone was immensely impressed. How do you know that that is so? And the surgeon, who had gone in for pathological exercise afterwards, pointed to the misshapen toes, to the inverted knee, and to the cap beneath the shin, explaining that fat boys' limbs tend, on the whole, to be of that nature.
Julian, Clary, you've challenged.
Did he misunderstand the time?
No, he's taken it because, I mean, this is radio. It's what you hear, and it's not what's written down. It's Fat Boy Slim.
This is radio?
Oh, well,
It's radio,
thanks
yes.
for the tip.
We're being recorded?
Yes, that's right, yes. Why, did you dress for television?
I did, yes.
He's taken it rather cleverly, which the audience enjoyed as well, as Fat Boy's limb.
Well, I'll shut up then.
But it did take you a rather long time to cotton on to that, didn't it, Julian?
Well, I was enjoying it as much as the audience.
Yes, right. So I don't think he was deviating.
No, I don't either, having had it explained. Hush my mouth.
So 17 seconds still available. Fat Boy Slim Clement starting now.
I understand that there is a man who calls himself Fat Boy Slim, who sells the
Julian Clary
tissue.
challenge.
At last.
And what's your challenge this time?
Just I wanted to say something. He said man twice.
Yes, he did say man twice. The audience applauded them because Jenny, very sportingly, and she shows you, actually whispered to Julian what the challenge should be. Fat Boy Slim, 11 seconds, Julian, starting now.
I've never met the man. I've never had the pleasure of him, but I'm...
Paul, challenge.
Never. 2 nevers.
I never had the pleasure of him either. No, right. Paul, you've got in.
Well, that makes 2 of us.
8 seconds. Fat Boy Slim, Paul, with you, starting now.
Fat Boy Slim, his real name is, of course, Norman Cook, and he's married to Zoe Ball, who is the daughter...
Paul Merton, with points in the round and 1 for speaking as the whistle went gained, has moved forward. Jenny, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is Oz, and we'd like you to talk on it, starting...
Can I just ask what that means, Oz? Do you mean as in Australia, short Oz?
No, you see, this is radio, as I said before. It's whatever you like to interpret it.
I thought we were just playing for fun.
We are playing for fun, and you've created a lot of fun already. It's like Fat Boy Slim became Fat Boy Slim.
Right.
It's Oz. You take Oz in any way you
how
like.
we laughed.
Oz means different things to different people. You talk on Oz, 60 seconds, starting now.
Oz is short for Australia. I've been there, 2 weeks. Just recently did Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which I triumphed at. Oh, the reviews. Do you know, it's great going to Australia at the moment because it's really cheap. Do you want to see my boots? Look at these boots. No, let them see my boots before. Look!
Jenny, your boots are wonderful, but we're not on television, my love. This is radio. I should explain to our listeners, she got up on the desk, showed off her boots, and someone challenged you, which was Julian, and you were hesitating because you actually stopped. Brought the show to a halt as you showed off your magnificent boots.
That wasn't my challenge, actually.
Right. Well, your light came on, Julian.
No, I did challenge, but I wasn't challenging about hesitation.
Well, what were you challenging about?
Repetition of Australia.
Yes.
Absolutely. I can't give you 2 points. Anyway, 45 seconds, Oz is the subject with you, Julian, starting now.
I've been to Australia as well, a little island called Orpheus, which is on the Barrier Reef, where you go there to look at the fish. Unfortunately, I had a terrible ear infection. Do you think I could put my head under the water? No, siree. It's a lovely place, though. They're very open there. They don't care what you say on radio or television in Australia. You can get away with absolutely...
Paul Merton challenge.
Repetition of Australia.
Yes. 18 seconds. Oz is the subject, Paul. It's with you, starting now.
A man called Frank L. Baum, spelt B-A-U-M, wrote a book called The Wizard of Oz sometime in the early 20th century. And although there's a famous film based on that novel, he wrote many. In fact...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of wrote.
Yes, you wrote too much, yes. Clement, you've got him with 5 seconds to go. The subject is still Oz, starting now.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful of Oz, is the song that...
So, Clement got the extra point for speaking as the whistle went when others in the round. He's creeping up on our leader, Paul Merton, and he's a little way ahead of Jenny Eclair and Julian Clary in that order. And Julian, we're back with you to begin. And the subject is A Bee in My Bonnet. 60 seconds, starting now.
I can't think of anything worse than having a bee in my bonnet, especially if you're bald, like that man down there. Don't mind me saying that, do you? You've got a lovely head of skin. Buzz around, wouldn't it?
Paul challenged. So,
hesitation.
Paul, hesitation, correct. 50 seconds. A bee in my bonnet, starting now.
As Julian pointed out, there is a man in the front row who hasn't got much hair. One of my favourite anti-heckle put-down lines was in a book I once bought. It said, "Excuse me, sir, are you bald or is your neck blowing bubblegum?" But a bee in my bonnet is something that I do have about anti-heckle lines, in fact, which I just repeated.
Jenny, a challenge. Whoa. Jenny has challenge, yes.
Heckle. He said heckle twice.
Yes, he did, right. So, Jenny, you've got in with the bee in my bonnet. You have 35 seconds. Tell us something about it now.
Once I literally had a bee in my bonnet. I was a bridesmaid for my sister and dressed up like a shepherdess. We were outside the church and there was this guy trying to take photos, but I was leaping all over the gravestones trying to get the bee out of my bonnet. And once my mum got a bee in her pants. She got them off the washing line, put them on, she got stung on the bum.
Julian, you challenge.
We're not talking about bees in your mother's pants. It's a deviation from the bonnet theme.
Yeah.
All right. Julian, you have a correct challenge. 15 seconds. A bee in my bonnet, starting now.
A bee in your bonnet would not be a problem, of course, if it was a friendly, neutered bee. It could crawl around and give you a little scratch occasionally. Maybe you could teach it things, and then it would move over to the other side of the head, give you another little poke there, and maybe crawl inside...
Julian Clary was speaking as the whistle went, getting that extra point. He's now equal with Jenny Eclair in third place, just behind Clement Freud, but out in the lead is still Paul Merton. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Things That Make Me Blush. 60 seconds starting now.
I think increasing my position in second place makes me blush a bit. But what does tend to make me blush, honestly, is having a bet on a horse and realizing that the money I placed with the bookmaker is equal to 7 weeks' wages of my Portuguese cleaner. And then I blush with shame. And if somebody would like to take the subject, I would be absolutely delighted.
Jenny, you
On
have
behalf
chance.
of all the Portuguese cleaners in the country, I'm going to take this round off you, Clement.
Right. So hesitation.
That includes my Portuguese cleaner. No.
No, I haven't said start yet, darling.
Oh, right.
36 seconds. Things that make me blush, starting now.
I have no embarrassment gene, so I find it very difficult to blush. That said, the other day, I fell down in front of a load of sixth form boys in Dulwich. I've just wobbled off into the gutter, and they all sniggered. It was awful. I got in my car, and I was the colour of that red nail varnish that Chanel's doing this season. I remember also being a teenager. I was out on a date, and he took me to the recreation park, because it was a posh date. I've said date twice, but you'll forgive me. No, you won't.
Paul challenge, yes.
Dates.
You did date twice, yes.
Yeah. I've dated more than twice.
We never heard what happened in the recreation park.
My pants fell out of the bottom of my jeans. You know when you wear your pants and your jeans and you put on clean pants next day, but yesterday's pants are still tucked in the leg? It made me blush. They ricocheted out of the leg of the jeans.
What a pity you didn't save it for the show, because you weren't actually in the show then. But we'll give you a bonus point because they like your pants.
What is it about the women in your family and pants? Your mother gets bees in her pants. Your pants just fall out the bottom of your trousers. Jeans. Yeah.
Jeans, right. And you have 9 seconds, Paul, on things that make me blush, starting now.
I used to be very easily embarrassed when I was 16 years old. It was torture for me to talk to anybody on the telephone. I hated it. I would ask my mother to...
Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point for doing so, and other points in the round has increased his lead. He's ahead of Clement Freud, Jenny Eclair and Julian Clary in that order. And Jenny, your turn to begin. The subject is a sure sign that summer is here. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
A sure sign that summer is here is when women take off their thick woolly tights and expose pallid flesh to the sun. I start applying fake tan, even though it smells of burning prophylactic, and make my legs that fluorescent orange of a chicken tikka. I don't care, it's better than looking like an old jellyfish. The other upsetting thing is, you know when you try on last season's clothes and you look like tapioca in a string bag? And you realise that you must go back to the gym. That's another sure sign that summer has begun.
Clement Freud's challenge.
Sorry, finger slipped.
I've said it before, I don't want to say it again. A Freudian slip, right? So, yes, he deserved that. So it was an incorrect challenge. So you were interrupted, Jenny, so you get a point for that. You keep the subject, 28 seconds, a sure sign that summer is here, starting now.
Blossom falls from the trees, swallows flit, ice cream vans tinkle their warning, don't run out in front of me, children, bells. And all over is the whiff of the barbecue. That's No.
Clement, your challenge this time.
Hesitate.
That was hesitation. And you have 14 seconds. And the subject is a sure sign that summer is here, starting now.
An 8-foot by 10-foot notice board.
Paul challenge.
2 feet.
2.
8 foot by 10 foot.
10 foot, yes. Don't often make those mistakes, Clement, but this time Paul got you. 11 seconds, Paul. A sure sign that summer is here, starting now.
Well, you have to be quick to catch it. I think it was a beautiful day this morning, and indeed most of the afternoon here in Brighton. It was lovely. The sun was out, people were paddling in the sea. Summer must have arrived.
Right. Paul Merton, more points in that round, one for speaking as the whistle went as well, has increased his lead ahead of the other three. And Julian Clary, it's your turn to begin. The subject, text messages. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Text messaging is a form of communication invented mainly for use by teenagers. However, it seems to have transpired into the rest of the community. Wherever you happen to be, you hear that annoying beep beep noise, and it's just...
Paul Merton. Yeah, I know what you're going to say. Oh, it's a tough game. Beep, beep
but
noise.
That's one word.
No, it isn't. It may be hyphenated, but We are in radio, as I've said before, and it's what you say, and you say beep, beep, that is repetition. I'm sorry, Julian. They loved you for it, but Paul had a correct challenge. 46 seconds, text messages to Paul starting now.
I feel a bit unhappy and challenging Julian there on text messages. I was quite interested in what he was saying because I don't know a great deal about them. I know it's abbreviated words that appear somewhere.
Jenny, challenge.
You said no twice.
Yes.
Yes.
Come on, Jenny, let's hear from you on text messages. 35 seconds starting now.
I don't know how to do them. I'm a complete Luddite. I like my messages on blue note paper, written in blood, tied up in pink ribbons.
Paul, challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, you've got it back, you see, Paul.
I ran out of personality then, Paul.
25 seconds, text messages, Paul, starting now.
So I think that's what they are. I don't really see the point of them, but I suppose it's a good way of people...
Julian challenged.
Two supposes?
Yes, I suppose that's what they are. You said suppose before.
Did I?
Yes, you did, I'm
Are you
afraid.
sure?
I'm absolutely certain. And 20 seconds, Julian, text messages starting now.
I conducted an entire relationship by text. Will you stop staring at me like that? Don't go on my nerves.
Clement, you challenge.
Like some great big fishbowl next to me. No idea.
No, I'm sorry you've been challenged by Clement Freud. Yes, Clement.
Deviation.
Why?
Stop staring at me.
I know, stop staring at that.
Nothing to
You
do.
give me a very difficult decision because she was... Jenny Eclair, who's sitting beside Julian Clare, there on my left and the other two on my right, she was staring and trying to put him off so as to get in there. And so it really was intimidating. And Clement, quite rightly, has got a correct challenge. But I think, to be fair, it was because you were intimidating him. I think we won't count that challenge. And we won't have any points scored, but say, Julian, you keep the subject. 16 seconds, starting now.
So, this man that I was seeing texted me on a frequent basis, and I would text back. Eventually, we graduated to the use of a telecommunications system, and I went off him entirely. Isn't it funny how life works out?
Jenny, challenge.
2 hymns. Him,
Yes,
him, yeah.
him. And Jenny, you've got him with 3 seconds to go. Then you have text messages. And Julian, sitting beside you, is now going to intimidate you. 3 seconds, text messages starting now.
There are all sorts of abbreviations you can use when texting. It's called netiquette.
So Jenny Eclair was speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and she has leapt forward. She's now almost equal with Clement Freud in second place, just ahead of Julian Clary, but out in the lead still is Paul Merton. And Paul, it's your turn to begin, and we are moving into the final round. And the subject is... do you love us as much as that? Yes! We thought you loved us more, but it doesn't matter. Going to the hairdressers is the subject, Paul. 60 seconds, starting now.
I'd like to thank the woman who made a funny noise in the front row, just like, what would he know about going to the hairdressers? But one of my favourite occupations is to go to an old-fashioned barber's in Jermyn Street in London when I've had a shave by them. It's beautiful. They get the hot towels out and the cutthroat razor and they cut...
Jenny.
Hesitation and cut. Like that.
Well, hesitation, yes. But 43 seconds, Jenny. Going to the hairdressers, starting now.
I adore going to the hairdressers. They love me going because I'm such a challenge.
Clement Freud challenge.
Me. That's
Going.
me.
Going. But going's on the card.
It's on the card, sorry.
Sorry, it's all right, Clement. So it doesn't matter. Jenny gets another point. She was interrupted. 40 seconds for going to the hairdressers, Jenny, starting now.
These days, they make me sign a release form before they put more bleach on it, in case the whole lot just falls out.
Julian challenged.
Was there 2 lots, or...
Yes, probably.
Yes, there were 2 lots.
Were there?
I've no idea what's coming out of my mouth, darling.
I don't think you said lot twice. Jenny, you have going to the hairdressers, 30 seconds, starting now.
I actually said...
Clement got in this time, yes. That was hesitation. Going to the hairdressers, Clement. For those listeners who tune in... For those listeners who tune in abroad and don't know the features of our 4 panellists, who are very well known to everyone in this country, Clement Freud doesn't have a great deal of hair on the top of his head. And that's why the audience laughed. I should explain that to you.
You mean that some people don't know what I look like?
There's probably people in China and the Indian subcontinent and all those countries.
How awful.
I know. Well, they write to me and ask for pictures of the team. They want to visualise
Do
what
they?
you look like. Yes.
And what do you do?
I send them pictures.
You haven't got any pictures of me.
I've
Or
got
me.
a picture of the team.
Oh, I see, have you?
Yes, the BBC supply it.
Do they?
Yes. We haven't had any pictures taken for a long time, but we should have some more, I think, actually. They've even
You could send pictures of anybody they wouldn't know. Picture of the Beverley sisters talking to Churchill.
Anyway, Clement, you've got in on going to the hairdressers. 28 seconds, starting now.
The less hair you have, the more you have to go to a hairdresser. It is a strange thing, but wanting to be thought hirsute is not anything that a bald man would desire. Therefore, I go to Jermyn Street, which is in London.
Paul
I
Challenge.
think that's deviation. A lot of men who are bald wear wigs, don't they? The bald men do want to be thought of as
You
suit.
don't go to a hairdresser for a wig.
No, but... You hadn't got to that bit.
No, I don't think he was deviating from the
No.
subject. No. So, Clement, you keep the subject. Another point to you. 14 seconds, going to the hairdressers, starting now.
If you drive up the A12, passing Chelmsford and Colchester, there's an excellent hairdresser on the left-hand side as you go through Saxmundham. I can't recommend him sufficiently. He is a master.
So Clement Freud brought that round to a close with a flourish there, and also gave a little flourish, which was a fine way to finish this particular edition of Just a Minute. So all I need to do now is to give you the final score. Julian Clary, who's triumphed so magnificent in the past, just finished in 4th place. Jenny Eclair, who gives such incredible value and everything that she does, and particularly at the hairdressers, finished just ahead of him, and she was 2 points behind Clement Freud, who always gives great value, and one man who gives extremely good value, and once again got the most points. We say, Paul Merton, you are the winner this week. So, congratulations to our 4 clever and delightful players of the game. We thank Paul Merton, Julian Clary, Jenny Eclair, and Clement Freud. We also thank Janet Haplehurst, who's helped me keep the score, and she's blown her whistle so magnificently. And we also thank Claire Jones, who is our producer and director, who tries to keep us all in order. And we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this lovely game, which we all enjoy playing. And we are very grateful to this lovely audience here in this beautiful Theatre Royal in the city of Brighton, who've cheered us on our way. We hope you've enjoyed yourself. Thank you, that's enough. Because we've enjoyed ourselves, we've enjoyed having you here, and so from our lovely audience, from our magnificent panel, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye until the next time we tune in and play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 delightful and charming and talented players of the game who've come together to give you of their best. Show off their verbal dexterity, their intellectual ingenuity, as they try and speak on a subject that I give them in just a minute, without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. In no order of sequence, but as they are surrounding me on the stage, it is Ross Noble, Tim Rice, Sue Perkins, and Tony Hawkes. Please welcome all 4 of them. And beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score and blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the famous City of Varieties, in the heart of that great city of Leeds, in the heart of that great county of Yorkshire. And And we have a real white rose audience here from all parts of Yorkshire and some from outside the county who've come to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Tim Rice. Tim, how to recognise a real Yorkshireman? That is the subject. Go for it if you can for 60 seconds, starting now.
Not many people know that Robert Mugabe is a real Yorkshireman because spelt backwards, Mugabe says "Eba gum." But I digress. From what I hear you cry, Yorkshire...
Sue Perkins' challenge.
Repeat Mugabe.
Yes, but he also said I digress, which is deviation, isn't it? And you've got the first point, and you have 51 seconds to take over the subject of how to recognise a real Yorkshireman, starting now.
I won't indulge in cliches, the flat Catherine, the whippet, but I will say that putting the simple letter T before every word...
Ross, you've challenged.
I thought that was hesitation.
It was hesitation, yes. So, Ross Noble, you have a correct challenge, so you get a point for that, and you take over the subject. You have 45 seconds available. How to recognise a real Yorkshireman, starting now.
The Yorkshire Tourist Board, in fact, placed many cardboard cutouts of Yorkshiremen around the area to please the Americans, because when they arrive in town, they want to see a real down-to-earth salt of the whatever it is.
Tim Rice, you challenged.
Hesitation, I'm afraid.
Yes, it was. Well, he stumbled. We interpret that as hesitation. Tim, correct challenge. A point to you for that. 33 seconds available. How to recognise a real Yorkshireman, starting now.
It's very easy to recognise a real Yorkshireman. He's just come up the mine. He's about to bowl 14 overs of blistering pace. And furthermore...
Sue Perkins' challenge.
Margaret Thatcher shut down all the mines in...
I think that was a real sympathy applause, but actually he wasn't deviating, strictly speaking, from the subject because, I mean, the cricketer he was talking about, one in particular, Yorkshireman, we know, did come from the mines and did play for Yorkshire and for England, which is Freddie Truman. So, technically you are correct. Tim,
well,
so
technically, I'm correct, whichever way you look at it.
All right, but I was just being
Fight me,
gentle to
Tim.
Sue. Why not? Tim, incorrect challenge, so you get a point for that. You keep the subject. 27 seconds. How to recognise a real Yorkshireman, starting now.
You can recognise a real Yorkshireman by the fact that he refers to this magnificent county as ridings, not bits of north and south. And I knew that would get a big round of applause. Actually, I hoped it would get a rather larger.
Tony, challenge.
Well, actually, I was sort of... He was going to go round of applause, but he did repeat get a round of applause, hope it would get a larger round of applause.
He did.
Yes. I was...
You haven't got many friends in this audience at this moment.
Sorry,
Yes.
I haven't said anything in this show, and I thought I'd like to get
there we
involved.
are, yes. No,
It's as simple
a
as
tough
mentioning
challenge,
ridings.
but a correct one. So, Tony, you get a point and the subject and 13 seconds. How to recognise a real Yorkshireman, starting now.
My father is actually from Yorkshire, and my mother's from Essex, which...
Tim tries challenge.
Repetition of my.
Correct.
Hoist it on your own vocal petard.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
So
that
he's
is
got
fair
back
en-
at you with the
fair
same kind of challenge, and let's not be too picky as we go along, though, please. 10 seconds available. Another point to you, Tim. How to recognise a real Yorkshireman, starting now.
A real Yorkshireman is everywhere you look in this beautiful city of Leeds.
Sue Perkins' challenge.
I think he said beautiful city before, and he begun this about 4.5 hours ago.
I don't think it was
right.
as long as that, but he did refer to that. Yes, repetition. So, 6 seconds for you, Sue, to tell us something about how to recognise a real Yorkshireman, starting now.
I look out in the audience and I see amongst the gathering here at the City Varieties a beautiful clump of real Yorkshiremen.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Sue Perkins, who, with other points in that round, has now gone into a strong lead ahead of the others. In fact, she's 1 point ahead of Tim Rice and 2 ahead of Tony Hawks and Ross Noble. Ross, your turn to begin. The subject, pips. Just pips, that's all. Tell us something about pips in this game, starting now.
Pips is the sound that you hear when the money runs out on a public telephone. Before electricity was invented, people would have to hold an orange above their head and squeeze it so that the tiny seed-like things inside would fall down, making a ding noise on the top of the phone. Of course, the trouble with that was that because there wasn't any electricity, you couldn't hear the other person on the end of the phone. So what you had to...
Tim was challenged. The audience were laughing so much, and Tim was sitting beside you, and he was the only one that probably who heard what you said. What's your challenge, Tim?
I think he repeated phone. I feel very bad about this.
Public-
I know.
Didn't I say
I know
it?
it's unpopular, but it was true.
Did I not say public telephone and
No,
then phone?
you said phone 2 or 3 times.
Ross is playing to the audience, that's why they're clapping here.
I think he did say phone again, though.
Okay,
He did
what?
say phone a second time, so Tim, a correct challenge. 38 seconds on Pips, starting now.
Pips I always associate with Gladys Knight. I often wondered what one of her backing singers would say when asked, "What do you do for a living?" He would have to say, "I'm a Pip." This would seem strange at first glance, or first...
Tony Hawk's challenge, yes.
Hesitation and...
Well, he hesitated after he repeated the word first.
Well, hesitation, whatever you like. I don't know. I've lost the will to
This
live.
is terrible.
24 seconds, Pips, with you, Tony, starting now.
Like Tim, I used to love watching Gladys Knight and her Pips leaving on their midnight train to Georgia. And indeed, what a magnificent job it was, because all they had to do was repeat things that she'd sung. There wasn't any words to learn because they just copied whatever the diva herself had come out with. I am amazed at the ability that they had just to do it, just to say those.
Oh, the frustration of the game is overwhelming, and Tim, you challenge first.
Well, he sort of stumbled.
He stumbled. We interpret that as hesitation.
He was getting higher and higher, and then he
And,
hesitated.
yes, he should have gone a little bit higher, because you got him with only 1 second to go. Yeah, but it's true. 1 second is still available. Tim, Pips, starting now.
Melons are...
So, Tim Rice was seen speaking as a whistle and gained that extra point for doing so, and he's now taken the lead at the end of that round. Sue Perkins, will you take the next round? The subject is, what I can do in just a minute. The audience are laughing already. They've got rather...
What
rather
upsets
strange
me, it's
minds.
the laughter of true knowledge, which...
No, I think it's imagination. They're just wondering what you're going to say. But go on the subject if you can. 60 seconds, starting now.
In just a minute, I can tell you about the shortest ever recorded battle, which took place between a group of Sherman tanks and one man called Harry. As he stood there, he thought to himself, how on earth will I win this one? Should I form a pincer movement? No, he thought, there's only one of me, unless it's possible to split myself.
Ross challenge.
Was it one man called Harry?
Yeah, one man called Harry.
Yes.
Yes, there was one man called Harry. So repetition.
I was on a limb there.
Yes. You have a point, you have a correct challenge, and then a point for that. And you have 43 seconds available to tell us something about what I can do in just a minute, starting now.
What I can do in just a minute is reenact the best scenes from the Nicolas Cage film Gone in 60 Seconds. They tend to be the bits where the aforementioned actor takes a big bit of metal and breaks into one of the cars that he's trying to get for the villains who have paid him some money because his younger brother is involved in a scam, which quite frankly, you know, he's a bit...
Tim Rice, you challenge.
Well, there was a bit of bits and hesitation, I think.
So, Tim, a correct challenge, 23 seconds. What I can do in just a minute, starting now.
I could run about 4 or 5 feet in a minute. I could swim 1 yard. I could...
Tony Hawk's challenge.
There were 3 I could.
Yes, sorry.
I could, yes.
Oh,
3 I
I
could. You
feel
let
so
2 go,
quick, Tony.
take
I
the challenge on the
can't do
third.
it.
Tony, tell us something about what I can do in just a minute. There's 16 seconds available, starting now.
If I did it now, I could get arrested, so I won't. Instead, I'll talk about what I might do in a minute if I had that much time left, but I've probably only got 20 seconds or something like that. But I can tell you this. If I had a full minute of that...
Right, thank you. Well, at the end of that round, Tony Hawk, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. And others in the round, he's now in second place behind Tim Rice, just ahead of Sue Perkins and Ross Noble in that order. But Ross, it is your turn to begin. I'm sure this has been chosen especially for you. The art of yodeling. Tell us something about the art of yodeling, Ross, in 60 seconds, starting now.
Yodeling is what dyslexic people write down when they're trying to describe Kate Moss's profession. The other important aspect of yodeling is what is often used to describe the child of the Grand Jedi Master. It is often taken part in the valleys where the goatherds stand there shrieking out across the void I feel a bit sorry for the young people in inner city areas who have to use lift shafts in big flats in order to create the same sort of effect. It's about time that this government got round to giving some grants to these particular youths in order to create the necessary Swiss-type singing which can be so beneficial when old people hear it, except, of course, if they're deaf, because it has to be said a lot louder than it... Could somebody buzz in, please?
They were being a bit naughty. He was going so well, and the audience were enjoying it so much, the other three players decided to let him continue with his ramblings, They were, but they were surreal and delightful. And you should have kept going for another 8 seconds. You'd done the full minute. But you appealed for help, and Tim was the first one to come to your rescue, and he buzzed. So, Tim, yes, I don't know what the challenge was, but I think he did everything that you shouldn't do in just a minute. But he did it magnificently, and the audience loved it. So give him a bonus point. But, Tim, you have a subject, having got a correct challenge. 8 seconds available. The art of yodeling starting now.
I remember you. This was a hit record in 1962 by Frank Ifield, and he put yodeling on the map where it should never have left.
Indeed, he did. Frank Ifield, yes, I was with him at the Palladium. Lovely. Right. I don't know why you laugh.
Were you performing, or were you just going on a date? What was the...
I was on the same bill as him. At the Palladium.
Did this bill mind or not?
In the 60s, I was working with Arthur Haynes. We were top of the bill with Frank Ifield. And, I've already mentioned...
Been a downward spiral ever since.
Who was speaking then as a whistle went? It was Tim Rice, wasn't it? So he's increased his lead at the end of that round. And, Tony, your turn to begin. The subject, sloth. Tell us something about sloth in just a minute, starting now.
I can't be asked.
I've given two other players bonus points for their contribution, so now Tony gets a bonus point for his contribution, the illustration of sloth. But, of course, Tim Rice challenged because it was hesitation, and you have the subject, Tim. Sloth starting now.
Sloth is a very sluggardly, slow-moving...
Ross.
Sorry, I thought he was hesitating there.
I was.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, Ross, you tell us something about sloth in 56 seconds, starting now.
I feel a bit sorry for the sloth because he's just a normal little animal, but he's also one of the deadly sins, which I don't really feel is appropriate. I mean, how would you feel if it was thou shalt not kill, murder, pig? It just doesn't make sense. To bestow these qualities onto a creature is...
Sue Perkins.
Two creatures?
Animal, wasn't it?
No,
I retract
before.
immediately. I sense hostility.
Ross, another point to you. 38 seconds, sloth, starting now.
Sloth could all
Gone that time, yeah, that was hesitation. Tony, you got in first. And 37 seconds, sloth, starting now.
I still can't be asked.
I can't give another bonus point, Tony, sorry, because I can't distribute them too freely. It wouldn't be fair on the others. But, Sue, you got in first. 35 seconds on sloth, starting now.
Sloth is my favourite deadly sin, that it requires very little effort. In fact, to be naughty and be slothful at the same time means you rarely have to get out of bed, which is something in my profession I'm well used to. In terms of the 7 deadly sins, it's the one I'm most...
Tim, challenge.
Repetition of sins.
Yes, you mentioned that.
If not deadly as well, I can't remember.
Well, it doesn't matter.
A long time ago.
20 seconds for sloth from you, Tim, starting now.
Sloth hangs upside down all day long from a branch of the kookaburra tree. I'm talking absolute cobblers.
I know you are. You say it so convincingly, the audience, everyone was convinced it does. Right, you're thinking of bats, I think, right. 13 seconds. You got in first, Sue, starting now.
Sloth is accompanied by its distant cousin, avarice. And if anyone has any idea what that means and could put it in plain and simple vocabulary, I'd be very grateful.
Tony, challenge.
What does vocabulary mean?
I don't know, but I bet you've got 1 second left on the clock.
Though she didn't quite get the word vocabulary out, I did know what she was trying to say, so I don't think I should give it a guess.
You spent so many times in pubs with people slurring at you, you understand that language.
You've obviously spent your time with a lot of sloths in your time, too. So, Sue, 5 seconds on sloth starting now.
Strangely, Tony has woken from his sluggish state and now presses the buzzer with a manic...
So Sue Perkins, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. She's moving forward. She's only a couple of points behind Tony Hawks. Ross Noble's behind both of them, but out in the lead is Tim Rice, who also begins the next round. Tim, love letters. Tell us something about those in this game, starting now.
Love letters straight from your heart. Keep us so near while apart. I'm not alone in the night when I can have all the love that you write. Yes, those words strike home every time I hear them. I am moved, deeply affected. What excellent lyrics they are. Would that I had written them, if only because the income from that song is about £78,000 a month and has been so since 1936 when Edward Hayman penned them. He also penned...
So, Ross Noble, you listened very well. Yes, he did pen and...
He also penned...
That didn't net £78,000, did it, that one?
No. 32 seconds available, Ross. Love letters starting now.
I send about 15 love letters a week, and I now have 20 restraining orders against me. Unfortunately for me, Natalie Imbruglia does not appreciate the attention that I'm giving her, despite the fact that I don't use my own handwriting. I go to the local newspaper and using scissors and glue, I create a letter which I feel myself is an act of sheer love for her. She, in fact...
Yes, Sue, your challenge. What's your challenge, Sue?
I don't like to do it, but it was hesitation.
Yes, it was, yes.
Yep.
And you've got him with 5 seconds to go on love letters starting now.
After having Natalie Imbruglia mail redirected to me, I saw firsthand Ross's attempts at gaining...
So, Sue Perkins is shooting forward there with great style. And not only more points than one for speaking with when she's now equal with Tony Hawks in second place. They're now trailing Tim Rice by only 4 points. And they're a few points ahead of Ross Noble, who also begins the next round. Ross, the subject now is nostrils. With 60 seconds now.
Flared nostrils are often a sign of anger. It was also the most fashionable way to have your nose in the 1970s. David Soul used to often...
Oh, Tony, you challenge first.
I think there was a hesitation.
That was a hesitation.
And blah, blah, blah as well. Which
Repetition of blah as well.
Yes,
then.
repetition of blah. 51 seconds available for you, Tony, on nostrils starting now.
One of the disappointing things about growing older as a man, the nostril hair increases as you grow to be more and more...
Tim Rice, challenge.
A couple of grows there, weren't there?
Wow. Certainly, yes. I said more and more anyway. It was rubbish. Go on, take it. It was terrible. It was disgraceful and it was getting worse. Take it.
Starting from a very low
I don't
base.
want to talk about nostrils. I'm sick and tired of them.
You put a whole dampener on the whole procedure.
I'm afraid that sloth thing is carrying on.
I know it is. Tim, it's a correct challenge. He did repeat. And 43 seconds on nostrils starting now.
Where would we be without our nostrils?
Tony Hawk's challenge.
Slough.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't think
It's an answer. He asked a question. I had to answer.
You've given an answer, but
A very
I'm
good
afraid...
challenge, Chairman. He should have the subject.
Yes, give him nostrils. Make him do it.
Right. They're being very generous, and they're also putting each other under pressure. So, the subject is nostrils, and you have 40 seconds starting now.
Unbeknownst to most of the people here, the government put a new decree in last night that if you didn't have any nostrils, you had to go to Slough. And that explains my previous...
Ross Noble challenge.
repetition of Slough.
No. No, you can't. I'm allowed to say Slough in my challenge. I didn't say it when I was talking.
No, you didn't say it when you were talking.
Yes.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Yes.
He said... Tony, an incorrect challenge, a point to you, 32 seconds, and nostrils starting now.
They do flare, and people say it is indeed a sign of anger. But I know someone whose nostrils do that thing where they get bigger at the sides when they're just slightly cross. And this is confused.
Sue Perkins' challenge.
It's a bit repetition of when 3 times.
Yes, there was when, yes.
Very
yes.
good, very good.
I don't know if it's very good, but it's accurate. Sue, you've got him at 21 seconds on nostrils, starting now.
The thing I hate about my nostrils is they're slightly bulbous, which is not to detract the enormous ski slope which has appeared on the side of my face, like a sundial almost. And in the summers, many people come with crampons and try and climb the north face of my own visage. I'm very interested to hear Ross, and I'd like to hear more from him as I stumble my way through and
But Tim challenged.
Well, I would obviously like to stop her because she wanted to be stopped, but there was a couple of hears.
That's right, yes. And she was deviating from
Thank you, Tim.
nostrils.
Thanks,
onto,
all right. It's
to
all right,
Ross.
Sue.
Tim, you've got in with 3 seconds to go on nostrils, starting now.
Nostrils, what an inspiring topic to talk about, even for 3 seconds.
So, let me give you the score at the end of that round, because I think we're actually moving into the last round. Ross Noble is taking up a noble 4th place, but with great style. And great perspicacity and inventiveness. Sue Perkins is in a 3rd place with great strength and coherence and plausibility and intelligence. And in 2nd place with great sloth and all other kinds of other things he conveys is Tony Hawkes, who's only 3 points behind Tim Rice, which is very interesting. And Sue's only 4 points behind, so anything could happen. Sue Perkins, it's your turn to begin. It's the last round, and here's an aggressive subject for you. A bunch of 5s. Tell us something about a bunch of 5s in 60 seconds if you can, starting now.
A bunch of 5s is something you won't get from a florist, unless, of course, you've just told her you're sleeping with her husband. In which case, she's likely to bear down on you with a bunch of 5s, also known as a knuckle sandwich, GBH, or this is what will happen to you if you spend an extended time in Scotland.
Oh, yes, Tim.
Well, admirable sentiment, of course. But there was a gap you could have driven a truck through. Hesitation.
There was a gap. There was
I
a
had,
hesitation.
Then I wouldn't have said that thing about Scotland.
I know, because I don't think either you or Tim should venture north of the border for quite a while after what you've just said. And Tim, you had a correct challenge, so you get a point for that. And you have a bunch of 5s in the final round, and you have 42 seconds starting now.
A friend of mine was in a pop group called A Bunch of 5s, and they didn't have much of a career. Total disaster from start to finish, so that's enough of that. A Bunch of 5s is actually, as pointed out so soon...
Ross Noble challenge.
There was a little bit of hesitation.
There was. I was
Just a
falling
little bit,
apart.
yes.
Yeah.
Ross Noble, 33 seconds. A bunch of 5s starting now.
I once went to see the Bunch of 5s live in concert, and I have to say they were the finest pop group I ever saw. If it wasn't for Tim Rice down the front shouting, "You're rubbish, get off, you'll never amount to anything," I thought this wasn't pleasant, so I gave him a bunch of 5s.
Tony Hawk's challenge.
Well, was there a hesitation?
There was a hesitation, yes. He made his point, he got his laugh, did it wonderfully, and we are hearing from everybody in this round, which is the last round, on the subject of bunch of 5. 16 seconds with you, Tony Hawks, starting now.
A bunch of 5s is when all the centre halves in the Premier League go out for an evening out. It is...
Tim Rice challenge.
2 outs.
There were 2 outs.
It's true.
Yes, there were 2 outs. What do you mean, oh? It's the rules. 10 seconds with you, Tim, on a bunch of 5 starting now.
A bunch of 5s is something I would only resort to in the very last instant. Like if somebody said to me, "Hello," then...
Tony challenge.
How about if someone buzzed you with a second to go?
All I can do there is give Tony a bonus point. First, we enjoyed the interruption, but Tim was interrupted, so he gets a point for that. And he keeps the subject for the last 3 seconds. Or he may only go for 1, we don't know. A bunch of 5s starting now. And he has been timed. Ross Noble.
Sorry, I just want to see him punch someone.
A bonus point to Ross Noble. And Tim has still got the subject with 2.5 seconds. A bunch of 5s starting now.
I abhor violence. I hate it.
So, Sue, you got in, yes?
He was grimacing, and he was lost in the magic of the ham moment, and then just stopped. So,
He just stopped.
it was hesitation.
He definitely is. He hesitated there, yes.
I just lost it. I dried.
I know.
That
Thank
means
you
he's
for
been
explaining to our listeners what he looked like at that particular time. It does help in radio. And Sue, we have heard from everybody with great style on this last subject of a bunch of fives. And Sue Perkins has got in with 1.5 seconds ago, starting now.
After this show, Tim Rice will...
So it only remains for me to give you the final situation. It hasn't changed much throughout the show, but the points have moved forward consistently throughout. Ross Noble started in 4th place, finished in 4th place, but with a lot of points. Sue Perkins... and a lot of style as well. Sue Perkins started with great flourish and finished with great flourish and a lot of points, but just in 2nd place behind Tony Hawks, who had equal flourish and panache and style, and he has got a lot of points. But 4 points ahead of them, the man who took the lead at the beginning, kept it through to the end, who was Tim Rice. So, Tim, we say you're the winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 delightful players of the game, Ross Noble, Tim Rice, Sue Perkins and Tony Hawks. Also thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score, blowing her whistles with such policeman-like style, and also our producer, Claire Jones. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're deeply indebted to this lovely Yorkshire audience here at the City of Varieties in Leeds for cheering us on our way. We hope you haven't felt too hot, because we've loved having you here. From our audience, from the panel, from me, Nicholas Parsons, hope you've enjoyed it. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Till then, goodbye! Yes!